Today is Monday, August 25th, 2025. It is 9 a.m. and this is a special meeting for the Kings County Board of Supervisors. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Nevs.
Here.
Richard Valley.
Here.
Doug Verboon.
Here.
Rusty Robinson.
Here.
Robert Thayer is absent.
Okay, 4 members present, 1 absent. At this time, would you all please rise? Oh, do we do no invocation today? So since the sheriff is dressed up today, we're going to have the sheriff do the pledge of allegiance. You want to do the invocation?
Whichever one you want, both, whatever,
Yeah,
however you want to do this.
Both.
You're in charge.
Yeah, you're on your way out, so we got to get our money out of you. Would you all please rise for invocation by Sheriff Dave Robinson?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Please bow your heads. Dear Jesus, please bless this board and our community as we move forward into the next generation and the future of government. God give them grace in the decisions that they make, and obviously supporting, the local community and everything that they do going forward to make our community safer and a better place to live. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate that. And only day we probably need help from a higher power. We don't have invocation. So very important that we do that. That way we can leave. Yeah. Okay, unscheduled appearances. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board on items of interest within the board jurisdiction and which are not already on the agenda. The board will not answer questions impromptu, and concerns or complaints will be referred to the appropriate staff. For items which are on the agenda, members of the public will be provided an opportunity to address the board on each item as it is brought up for discussion. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes on their comments. Do we have any speaker cards?
I have no written correspondence, no speaker cards, and no one on the line seems to have their hand raised.
Anybody in the audience? Nothing. Very good. We'll go to item number 3, final budget hearing, administration. Kyria Martinez. Good morning, Kyria.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Kyria Martinez, County Administrative Officer. This marks my 9th budget cycle year presented to your board. We will have a little icebreaker. Every staff that presents today will talk about how long they've been here with presenting the board for you this morning. So on June 18th, your board adopted the recommended fiscal year 25-26 budget with state requirements adopted, and the adopted resolution must be submitted to the State Controller's Office by October 2nd. The total Kings County budget stands at $5,520,144,384, and it is balanced and prepared under your board's direction. Following an overview of the budget, including a department-by-department breakdown, the board will consider a temporary due pass of the final budget. Staff will return on September 23rd for the adoption of a resolution. This process allows for final adjustments based on today's hearing. Although we do not anticipate any major changes, this year's budget reflects a continued commitment to fiscal stability despite external challenges, including pressures at the state level for funding uncertainties and workforce retention needs. Strategic priorities remain focused on maintaining essential public services, supporting infrastructure projects, and aligning resources to meet long-term community needs. I want to extend my sincere appreciation to all the department heads who are here and who are listening for all their work in achieving a balanced budget. Special thanks to my administration staff, as well as the Department of Finance and Human Resources team for their efforts in closing out the fiscal year and finalizing position allocations and ensuring the accuracy of those positions. Let's begin with a slide. This is a brief description of our presentation. We will go over the basic assumptions, final budget changes, our famous budget equation. We'll talk about general fund history. We'll show some budget charts and the position allocations, and then we'll talk about next steps. So this is a recap of what was included and was brought to your board on June. So Human Services Agency net county cost, the general fund increases, has increased over the last few years. Since 23-24, it's increased approximately $800,000, a 22% increase. In fiscal year 24-25 was a $3.5 million increase, and in this fiscal year is a $4.4 million general fund contribution. That is due to no revenue growth in the 1991 realignment allocation not meeting base, which means that the revenues King County receives for the 1991 realignment funding sources is not generating enough money to cover the base funding obligations set by the state for the health and human services programs. When statewide or local revenues grow weak or lower sales tax receipts are lower, counties don't receive enough revenue to fully fund their base obligation, which means no additional growth dollars. We haven't been experiencing any growth dollars there, and so it is a direct impact to the general fund of the county. Salary and benefits increases. This is primarily driven by the Coffin Associate implementation. A salary survey, as you all know, increases cost to an organization because its purpose is to ensure that employee pays is competitive and equitable based on market standards. This was a $20 million increase in fiscal year 24-25. Retirement alone, it's a $2.7 million increase from last year. General fund impacts for risk due to our self-insurance was a $3.6 million increase. Costs are primarily due to liability self-insurance program funding requirements. Rising claims costs and settlement trends have driven the need for higher reserves and premium contributions to maintain adequate coverage levels and ensure long-term funding stability. These adjustments are necessary to protect the county against large liability exposures and claim experience. We saw a $1.5 million increase last year. This year, we're seeing an additional $2.1 million increase. Hazardous waste tax are flat. There's little revenue or growth from the hazardous waste tax. The county maintains an operational permit for the hazardous waste facilities, making this tax a significant source of the general fund revenue. Limited growth in this revenue source has placed additional pressure on the general fund as demands for services and programs continue to rise. One-time funds are falling off the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA funds, which were to provide significant relief during and after the pandemic. They have officially phased out. These one-time resources were previously used to offset general fund pressures and support programs and projects, and that is no longer the case in this fiscal year. Public safety overtime, compounded by the Coffin Associate implementation, overtime costs remain elevated across public safety departments, driven by staffing shortage, mandatory coverage, and operational demands. The county ITISF continues to be a concern for administration for several years due to its cost recovery model and service delivery approach. The department cost continues to rise significantly, which is largely driven by wage increases, even as IT manages fewer systems in-house, with more services moving to cloud-based platforms. More outside agencies, for example, Calvance, and City of Avenel, are discontinued to use county ITs, which shifts more expenses to the remaining users. Next slide, please. So basic assumptions. Here are some final budget changes that will provide detail and explanation within each budget unit. These represent some of the major variances that significantly impact the overall budget. So health insurance rate reduction. There was a $2.6 million lower than anticipated health insurance premium rates, which reduced the overall employee benefit cost. That was a positive. Insurance premium reductions, a $1.2 million savings from updated liability and property insurance premiums due to favorable claims. Public health reductions for grant closing out at $2.3 million. Mid-Kings GSA impact, that is approximately $500,000 increase to county general fund. Shares of costs related to the Groundwater Sustainability Agency obligation. Some Ag Commissioner Bate expense increase, $125,000. County Council staff reduction, $400,000. This was due to the reorganization of the County Council's office. IT services and maintenance contracts plus firewall update, another $867,000 impact to the county fund. Fire increased overtime and training expense, an additional $205,000. Code compliance and contracts impacts in community development, $164,000. General fund increases taxes and interest. There was a positive there of additional $1.9 million. And fire revenue increases for the Avenel fire contracts, an additional $646,000. And court security revenue, I believe the sheriff brought this up at the recommended budget that was going to be an increase. So we did receive an additional funding of approximately $415,000. And the closeout for our juvenile hall remodel, we're going to get $3.9 million from the state. And this is all to, backflow all the expenses we've paid for on the juvenile hall remodel. County council revenue increase for HSA billing services. That's $1 million to the good, and recommended we plan to move HSA's the way HSA recovers costs for their CPS attorneys. We are no longer doing that, and we're taking a phase-in approach. So those are some final budget changes that we'll go into detail within our slides, but just kind of wanted to highlight those ones. Okay. So here we are is the famous budget equation. So we start our budget process in the fall, and we host a training. And in January, we host an annual training with all the departments, and they submit all the requests. We take in and review every single request from a department. In early spring, we start putting the recommended budget. During this phase, we engage discussions with departments to distinguish between essential needs and additional requests, which is what I'll show in the next slide in our recommended. But this is slide, we always like to show it because it shows you what was the requested. So we look at this chart vertical down. So on the far left, on adopted, you see the adopted. We always compare it to what was adopted last year, and that was what was adopted by your board in 24-25. So you go to the right, we'll start off with the fund balance in pink. Our fund balance at requested was $24 million. Our current revenue at the time was $369 million, and our financing available was $394. So that's the circled. Now, if you go down, you see our expenses. So now you're starting to take your expenses. So expenditures were at $403 million. So you see there's a deficit of $9 million, and there was zero contingencies at that time. And why we like to emphasize this is because you could see that the expenses are far exceeding the revenue. And this is a problem ongoing. What ends up saving us is that pink in fund balance, which I will explain in the next slide. But all in all, this was our requested budget compared to the year before. So on the far left, like I mentioned, it was balanced, $395 in available financing, $395 in total appropriations. So our goal is to come to a balanced budget by recommended, and we achieved it. But there are some things that we had to make some drastic cuts to build up that contingency and have it balanced. So next slide, please. Again, on the far left, you see the adopted budget, and it's vertical down, and on the far right is the recommended. So at the time it recommended, our fund balance was $37 million, which was good. Our fund balance went up. Our current year revenues, and let me go back to the fund balance. Our fund balance went up, and that is due to the department submitting their year-end estimates. So that is what makes up that fund balance. So that's why it's so important when we talk to our departments. It's like, hey, we need to get some really accurate fund balance estimates because it builds up to this equation. So current year revenues at the time was $367 million. Available financing, taking the fund balance, and the current year revenue was $404 million. Our expenses, $393 million, and we were able to save up the contingency to $10 million. Why contingencies are so important, Matthew will talk about that in another slide, but I just wanted to what ends up coming out of fund balance is essentially the contingencies. So that $10 million always falls into fund balance, which allows our fund balance to be healthy the next fiscal year. So here at recommended budget, we were balanced, but I want to point out the current year revenues were at $367 million, but expenses were at $393. So it was not balanced in revenues to expenses. What's saving us is that fund balance. So that's why that fund balance is so important. And, we talk to our departments about, making sure that you spend what you actually need, because all that remains falls into fund balance. So here we are at final. So this is when the books close in August. Finance gave us the last actual fund balance for the year. And you go on the far right and you start off with your pink again, and your fund balance actually went down from the previous slide. So fund balance was, I believe, at 37 million. And now fast forward it to when the books closed, fund balance actually went down to 32 million. Yep. So what happened? No. So supervisor had asked, how come our fund balance went down by August? So what ended up happening here in this scenario is We had designated reserves at 6 million last year when we adopted the budget. So if you see on the far left, you see a 6.1 million that was designated reserve. That transfer did not occur till the end of the year. And so when the books finally closed, we took the 6 million out, we designated to reserve. So that immediately dropped our fund balance to the $32 million. But it could have played out another scenario where we didn't have that designation. And if it were to swing that low, it would be a concern. Current revenues on the far left in the green, 368.3 million. So our revenues did increase a little bit, and our expenses were at 390 million. We were able to save 10 million in contingencies, and we are at a balanced budget at $401 million for general fund. A lot of people ask us, well, why do we need to put that blue in contingency? Well, we usually don't spend any of our contingencies throughout the fiscal year. It is like our saving piece of funds that roll over into fund balance. And I will explain a little bit about our contingencies in the next slide. So we added this slide new this year, and it's important to note that our 10 million of the contingency, which is that circled on the far right on that budget equation that I just showed, it is of concern. And the reason behind it is because our contingency is severely inflated by one-time funds. And what I mean by that is that 7 million of that 10 million is made up of one-time funds, and one is related to FEMA reimbursement related to a HomeKeep project that occurred in 2021. And basically, the federal government reimbursed us for that this year. And we ended up paying off the pension obligation bonds. In 2004, we issued debt to pay off some of our pension obligation bonds. That debt has now been retired, and the annual payment that we were paying of 2.7 million was rolled into fund balance, which inflated our contingency total. So our true general fund contingency as of August 11th is $3.8 million. If those two things had not occurred this past fiscal year, that's what our true contingency would have been. And that is severely of concern because, like I said, that contingency falls straight into that fund balance. And if we don't have our contingency high enough, our fund balance drops, which allows us to not balance our budget for the current revenues. Next slide, please. And now I will kick it over to Matthew.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Matthew Boyette, Deputy County Administrative Officer, Kings County Administration. So this is, I believe, my 5th budget cycle now here in administration. So this slide that you're looking at here is a different look of the general fund equation that you were just looking at, but this shows a 15-year history as to where we've been and where we are today. And so it reads left to right. You've got all the various fiscal years, and then it's similar to the budget equation. We start with the beginning fund balance, and then any cancellation of reserves, and then current year revenues to give all available financing. From there, you have all of your financing uses or your current expenditures, any designations for reserves, and then your contingencies accordingly. So you'll see kind of, over the last 15 years, some might say, hey, your fund balance keeps, getting higher and higher, or your contingencies, you keep growing those higher and higher. That's all relative to the amount of expenses and the size of our operations. So if you look back 15 years ago, we had an operating budget of about $160 million. And fast forward to today, we're now hovering at 390 million. So we've grown substantially. And as a result, we have to always keep our contingencies growing relative to the size and scope of our operations. You'll see in this current budget here that's highlighted in the red box there, we have no designation for reserves this year. So as you've seen over the last handful of years, we've tried to put some money away and take advantage of all of the one-time funds that we've seen for all of the coronavirus relief funding, the CARES Act funding and the ARPA funding that we did receive. Tried to take advantage of that as much as possible and save for a rainy day because we knew at some point challenging fiscal times were going to be upon us. So wanted to be proactive. And so that's what you're seeing there. This year, we're not able to do that. because we're now dealing with those challenging financial times. So we don't have that money to put towards our reserves. So the Government Finance Officers Association, or what we call the GFOA, they recommend a 17% reserve based on your operating budget. So with our operating budget of $390 million, that would actually require us, well, not require us, but they would recommend us to have a general fund reserve of a little over $66 million. And so for years and years, we haven't been able to fund reserves because we haven't been able to afford it over the, except with the exception of the last handful of years. So right now, we're only at about 5% of our operating reserve. So if we align ourselves with the GFOA recommendation of 17%, we're 12% short of that goal. And that translates into about a $47 million shortfall in our reserve. So right now, our total general fund reserve that we have available to us is $19.31 million. So some might think, oh, wow, that's a lot of money. But again, look at the amount and the size and scope of our operation of $390 million. That 19 million doesn't go far if something goes haywire in the economy and we need to start drawing on that reserve. So just wanted to highlight that. And another important thing to highlight here, second column all the way to the left, you'll see is the fund balance column. And as you can see over the past 15 years, just with everything else, it is growing substantially year in, year out. And that signals a continued and increasing reliance on our fund balance just to keep the current scope of our operations sustainable. And so, as Kyria mentioned earlier, that is the importance of having those contingencies in there, because on the previous slides in that budget equation, if everything played out exactly as planned, that $10.9 million contingency, that's the only thing that rolls over to our fund balance. So if you just look at our current equation right now, rather than the $32.9 million that we have in our fund balance, if we really only had the $10 million, we would have to make a $20 million reduction somewhere in order to balance our budget. So again, two very important things to highlight there on that slide is the growth and relation to our contingencies and our increased reliance upon our fund balance year in, year out. Next, this slide is a look at the net county cost by department. And again, these are general fund impacts by department in ascending order there. And so as you're going to see, and this is a continuing trend there, that highlights your board's priority of public safety here in the community. So you'll see a lot of the public safety departments at the top. So the sheriff's department in first position there, followed by probation. And then we have district attorney shortly after. We do have the general fund contributions to other funds there in third place. And so if you're wondering, well, hey, that's not a public safety department, why are they at the top? The reason why that's at the top and why that continues to make its way into the top is there's a continued reliance over the last couple of years of general fund dollars in the fire fund in order to keep those operations sustainable, because the amount of funding in the fire fund now is no longer sufficient to sustain their operations. So more and more general fund dollars being supplemented there in their operations. So that's why you're seeing contributions to other funds there in third position. So still mainly attributed to the public safety operations there, and then followed by, again, district attorney there in fourth place. And so next we're going to go into all of the various charts. Chart one is going to be the grand total expenditures of all of our funds. Again, it's not just the general fund. And so that's going to be $520.14 million, followed by the financing sources to fund all of those operations in chart number two. Then moving on to chart number three, we're going to break out general fund expenditures only at $401.23 million, followed by in chart four, the general fund financing sources to fund those expenditures. And then moving on to chart five, we're going to look at, of all of those general fund expenditures, how much of that is discretionary and how much is virtually no discretion on that. And so we have discretionary expenditures of 74.17 million that I'll get into, and then we'll round it out talking about the position allocations in this budget. Here in chart 1, again, this is going to look at grand total expenditures by function across all funds within the department. And so again, the top function here is going to be public safety at 151.62 million, followed by public assistance at 141.41 million, and then followed by health in third place at 83.08 million, and then followed by all other at 44.2 million. And what lives in all others, that's going to be all of our debt service and all of our contingencies across all of the funds. So contingencies for general, contingencies for library, contingencies for roads, so on and so forth. And then rounding out in fifth position is just general government there at 43.18 million. Moving on, these are the financing sources that fund all of the expenses in chart 1. And again, the top 5, again, the first one, no surprise, is going to be our state and federal revenue sources at 289.88 million, followed by general taxes at 80.15 million. And then again, this is a very high importance. In third place, our third highest, our third most significant funding source for all of our entire county operations is our fund balance at 67.67 million across all funds and functions within the county. In fourth position here, we have other revenue at 54.06 million. And lastly, in fifth position, charges for service at 16.36 million. And now we're breaking out the same types of charts, but now we're just going to look at general fund only. So in chart 3, general fund expenditures, top 5. The largest expenditure category there is public assistance at 137.75 million. And moving on to second place, a close second, public safety at 127.64 million. And then in third place there, we have health at 83.08 million, general government at 38.73 million, and rounding out the top 5 is contingencies at the 10.91 million. Now, to fund all of those general fund functions, these are the financing sources in chart 4 of general fund. Again, the top spot there is state and federal of 244.29 million, followed by general taxes at 65.87 million. And again, I can't stress it enough, but our third, just as we saw in chart 2, as we're seeing in chart 4 here on the general fund side, our third most significant funding source for our operations is our general fund balance at 32.86 million, followed by other revenue at 30.87 million, and rounding out the top 5 is going to be charges for service at 15.31 million. Next is chart 5, which outlines our discretionary expenses. And so folks that look at our budget on the general fund side and think, wow, you have a general fund budget of, upwards of 420 million. You have lots of money to spend, lots of things you can do with that. When in all reality of the general fund budget, the vast majority of that is already spoken for, and there's virtually no discretion. So that's already taken up in various mandates and requirements of that funding. So of our entire general fund operating budget, 82% or 327.06 million of that is virtually has no discretion. There's some sort of mandate or requirement tied to that we must do with that money. So of which that only leaves 18% or $74.17 million, of which your board has some discretion to shift around to meet your board's priorities. And what makes up that 18%, again, off to the right, it breaks that down, and again, in ascending order. And again, no surprise, as we saw in a similar chart, you're going to see the public safety folks there at the top, with sheriff at 19.43 million in general fund. And then contingencies at the 10.91, followed by contribution to other fund of 9.25, again, primarily driven by the fire department is why we're seeing that creep up in there. And then followed by district attorney and probation at 8 million and 7.49 million respectively. And next, I'm going to pass it off to Giselle, who's going to talk about the final position changes in our final budget. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Giselle Coit, Administrative Analyst, Kings County Administration. This is my second budget cycle. Here we have the position changes for final budget. Our recommendation includes 1,693.51 full-time equivalents, which accounts for 30.75 adds and 46.75 deletes, resulting in a 16 position decrease for fiscal year 2025-26. The vast majority of the deletes are attributed to transfers within budget units and departmental restructuring. We also have 19 unfunded positions in this proposed final. This marks the first time we've seen an overall decrease in our total position count. As part of the implementation of Coffin Associates salary study, representing a significant investment in our workforce, some departments have supported this effort by reducing staffing in order to help offset associated costs. These changes reflect a countywide effort to balance the budget while still investing in competitive compensation. The following changes were made within the departments. In Job Training Office, 1 position added, 6 positions deleted, resulting in a net change of -5. County Council deleted 9 positions, resulting in a net change of -9. Finance deleted 1 position, resulting in a net change of -1. Child Support deleted 2 positions, resulting in a net change of -2. Next slide, please. In fiscal year 2024-25, we adopted 1,707.51 positions, and after the budget was adopted, your board approved a net total of 0.00 change throughout the fiscal year, keeping the amended fiscal year 2024-25 total at 1,707.51. The net change of 16 positions from the previous slide brings our proposed final position allocations for fiscal year 2025-26 to 1,693.51 positions. As you can see on the visual on this slide, there's been a steady increase in FTEs over the past several fiscal years. However, fiscal year 2025-26 marks a notable dip. This is the first time in recent history we've reduced positions, reflecting a strategic shift in resource allocation. Next slide, please.
So this concludes our main presentation, and we wanted to take the moment to give the board an opportunity for questions before we start each department. We have 22 departments and approximately 107 budget units. So this is the lengthier part that we're about to begin of the presentation, which will highlight any change that was made after what was printed in the recommended. This is a specific call out to those changes, and this is how the process works. We will request a temporary due pass after each budget unit, but also gives an opportunity for you to hear from each department, which will be presented by our administration staff. Each analyst and deputy CAO are assigned to each department, and so they will present their departments. After this, we will conclude with closing the budget hearings, seek board direction. And so does your board have any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Good. You're good.
Perfect. Now I will hand it over to Matthew. He's going to start with Board of Supervisors.
Thank you very much. So this is your board's budget here. It's going to be on page 45 of your recommended budget book. It does live within the general fund. And obviously, as you all know, your board is the governing body here over the entire county. There are 8 positions in the final budget for fiscal year 25-26. We do have a couple of final budget changes. So we have a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $21,786 due to the reductions in the health insurance rates, and an increase in services and supplies of $4,959 because we added a media module to our Civic Plus agenda management software system that allows better integration with the new software and some of the streaming options that we have for that. That leaves net revenue for your budget at 0 and net expenditures of $1,457,040, all of which are a net county cost to the general fund. This is a 17% increase from last year's budget, or an increase of $211,784. And this is primarily attributed to the change in the board ordinance that occurred last year. Requested temporary due pass. Temporary due pass, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Supervisor Nez, second by Valley. And we got to call roll, just temporary due pass. Okay. Good to go. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. Next, this is the general fund revenue budget. It's going to be found on page 50 of your recommended budget book, also living within the general fund. And this is the budget that houses all of our general fund revenues, in which your board has some discretion over. And so the principal revenue categories that we have here are going to be in taxes. So we've got property tax, sales and use tax, transit occupancy tax, and property transfer taxes. We also have our intergovernmental revenue here and our state aid, land conservation, and homeowner property tax relief built within this budget unit. We do have two changes here for final budget. We have an increase in taxes of $1.7 million, as well as, that's primarily attributed to some of the trends that we saw in fiscal year 24-25 for these revenue categories. So following those trends in the next fiscal year. And then we do have an increase in use of money and property of $250,000 due to an anticipated increase in our treasury balance. So we're able to earn more money on the interest on that that we have held in the treasury. This brings net revenue to $81,237,364. Again, this budget unit is revenue only, so there are no expenditures here. So it is a positive net county cost. So again, this contributes towards the fund balance. So again, this is not a draw on the general fund balance. This is a contribution to, of which gets drawn from the various departments that we'll be speaking about here in the slides to come. This is a 1% decrease from last year's adopted budget, or a decrease of $558,684, primarily attributed to one-time general fund contributions to the capital outlay fund that happened last year that are not happening in fiscal year 25-26. So with that, respectfully request a temporary due pass.
Devs and Valley. Okay.
Moving on, we have administration's budget, which is going to be found on page 53 of your recommended budget book, also living within the general fund. And administration oversees all county operations and functions, ensuring that the policies and priorities of your board are carried out in the most efficient and effective manner possible. So we do have 13 positions in fiscal year 25-26, and it does include the addition of one administrative analyst. And we have a couple of final budget changes. We have a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $38,903 due to the health insurance rate reductions, and an increase in services and supplies of $500 for some miscellaneous supplies. That leaves us a net revenue of $147,491 and net expenditures of $2,335,849, leaving a net county cost of $2,188,358, which is a draw on the general fund. This is a 38% increase from last year's adopted budget, or an increase of $606,445, primarily attributed to increases in staffing. Respectfully requested temporary due pass.
Devs and Valley. Okay, continue. Veronica.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Veronica Mello, Administrative Analyst at the County Administrative Office. This will be my second year presenting the final budget to your board. This slide here is the Department of Finance Budget Unit 121000. You'll find this on pages 58 through 62 of the recommended budget book. This department also lives in the general fund. The Department of Finance is responsible for all fiscal and accounting functions assigned and delegated to the offices of Auditor, Controller, Treasurer, and Tax Collector. The department has three primary divisions: accounting, treasury, and tax. There are a total of 22 FTEs for final budget. This includes the deletion of one vacant accounting assistant. The final budget changes include a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $51,076. This is attributed to the decrease in the health insurance rates, bringing the net revenue to $969,100 and a net expenditure of $4,434,945, with a net county cost of $3,465,845. This is a 6% decrease from last year's adopted budget, or a $203,487 decrease. The decrease is attributed to the reduction to health insurance rates and the deletion of one full-time accounting assistant. Requesting a temporary due pass.
Devs and Valley.
Next, we have the financial and HR systems budget. It's going to be found on page 63, living within the general fund. And this budget accounts for expenses related to the county's HR and financial systems. So that's going to be NeoGov and Megabyte primarily here. We do not have any final budget changes in this budget unit. We have no net revenue. This only accounts for expenses. And so we have net expenditures of $258,327, all of which are net county cost of the general fund. This is a 5% increase from last year's adopted budget, or an increase of $11,202, largely remaining flat from last year. Request for temporary due pass, please.
Ellie again, thank you.
County Council Budget Unit 130000. County Council provides legal services to support the Board of Supervisors and the day-to-day operations of the administrative office and the county's 23 departments, as well as commissions, boards, and a few non-county public entities. You'll find this on pages 65 through 68 of your budget book. This also lives in the general fund. There are a total of 6 FTEs for final budget. This includes an additional deletion of a vacant full-time deputy county council position from the existing 8 deleted positions from recommended, which include the following: 1 county council, 1 assistant county council, 3 deputy county councils, 1 legal clerk, 1 secretary to county council, and 1 supervising legal secretary, for a total of 9 vacant deleted positions for final budget. Final budget changes include an increase in charges for services of $1,082,360, and this is attributed to the Human Services Agency billing. HSA Child Protective Services and In-Home Support Services billing was initially removed from the recommended budget because at that time it was determined that County Council would recover costs through the cost allocation plan. During several conversations with HSA and administration, it was determined to create a phased-in approach to fully implement the charges from County Council to HSA through the cost allocation plan, which is how the county recovers attorney costs for child protective services. Therefore, in fiscal year 25-26, County Council will continue to directly bill HSA for services rendered and move towards the phased-in approach for the cost allocation plan in fiscal year 26-27. This includes a decrease in salary employee benefits of $455,604, and this is mainly attributed to the deletion of positions and the health insurance rate reduction, bringing net revenue to $1,297,560, with net expenditures of $2,344,290, and a net county cost of $1,046,730. This represents a 6% decrease from last year's adopted budget, or a $64,627 decrease. And this is attributed to the reduction in staffing and health insurance rate decreases. Requesting a temporary due pass.
Thank you. Supervisor Nazarvalley again, thank you. Alex.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Alex C. Walker, Administrative Analyst for Kings County Administration. I'm very excited to be here this morning because it's my first budget cycle, and up next for you this morning is the Human Resources Department, which lives in Budget Unit 140000. It is located on page 69 of your recommended budget book, and this department also lives within the general fund. HR is responsible for the county's employee and employer relationships activity, providing support to all departments and employees throughout the county. HR also maintains classification and pay, recruitment and selection, employee benefits, payroll processing, training, and equal employment opportunity programs. There are 12 positions in fiscal year 25-26. This includes the addition of 1 Human Resources Analyst 2 and the deletion of 1 Senior Human Resources Technician. Both of these adds and deletes were led by the department. There are 2 final budget changes for your board this morning. The first was a decrease in salaries and employee benefits of $35,368, primarily due to the reduction of Kings County health insurance rates. The second was an increase in services supplies in the amount of $2,794 in order to provide for record retention fees as well as the destruction of record fees in accordance with the board-approved policy. The net revenue for this department is $152,463. The net expenditures is $2,597,681, and the net county cost is $2,445,218. This represents a 36% increase from last year's adopted budget, or $649,079 increase, mainly attributed to the increased expenses such as psych, e-relations, personnel testing, as well as the salaries and benefits described above. At this time, we respectfully request a temporary due pass.
Thank you, Alex. Supervisor Robinson and Nevs.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Michael Amin, Administrative Analyst with Kings County Administrative Administration. This is my first budget cycle with Kings County. This is the insurance budget unit 141000, page 74 of the recommended budget book, which stays in the general fund. This budget accounts for various insurance policy the county has, such as blanket bond, medical malpractice, general liability, workers' compensation, fire and property insurance, pollution liability insurance, fiducial insurance, and cyber insurance. Final budget changes include decrease in service and supplies by $130,319, decrease in other financing uses, including $44,250, decrease in intra-fund transfer by $20,211. Between the three category, that decrease is primarily due to the decrease in general liability premium based on updates that amount from area estimates. Net revenue is $0. Net expenditures is $6,606,597, which leads to an county cost of $6,606,597. This is a 73% increase from last year adopted budget, or $2,792,034 increase. The increase primarily due to the increase in general liability insurance due to the amount of claims experienced in the county. $6,130,155 of expenses are directly related to budget unit 867,000 liability self-insurance internal service fund for unreimbursed cost of liability claims or the administrative expenses of those claims. Request a temporary due pass.
Thank you. Moved by the Navs, Robinson. Continue.
This is the employee benefit budget unit 142000, page 77 of the recommended budget book, which stays also in the general fund. This budget accounts for charges related to retirement, health insurance, management benefits, life insurance, and social security costs for the entire county. Charges are then directly applied to those applicable departments, leaving this budget with zero unreimbursed cost. Final budget changes including decrease in salaries and employee benefits by $2,676,246, a decrease in interfund transfer by the same amount to $2,676,246, and the change or the decrease in the two category primarily due to the health insurance rate decrease. Net revenue for the department for the unit is $0. Total expenditures is $62,764,605. Total expenditures are cost applied to county departments, leaving $0 in net cost applied expenses being picked up in this budget, which leads to net expenditures of $0 and net county cost of $0. This remains unchanged from last year adopted budget. However, the $62,764,605 is cost applied expenses is an increase from last year adopted budget by 4%, or $2,370,666 and $9. Request a temporary due pass.
Thank you. Supervisor Robinson, Supervisor Navs. Thank you. Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next budget unit for your board's consideration this morning is unemployment compensation, located in budget unit 148500, and is located on page 79 of your recommended budget book. This budget unit lives within the general fund, and it tracks the county's self-insurance costs for state-mandated unemployment insurance. Costs are charged back to department budgets to reflect actual operating costs. There are no final budget changes with a net revenue of $0. The total expenditures for this budget unit is $250,983, with a net expenditure of $0 because costs are charged back to departments, with a net county cost of $0. This represents a $0 change from last year's adopted budget attributed to the trends of actual expenses, and at this time, we respectfully request a temporary due pass.
Thank you. Supervisor Navs, Robinson.
The assessor clerk recorder, budget unit 152000 and 157200. That's on page 81 through 84 of your recommended budget book. This is also a general fund budget unit. The assessor is responsible for valuing nearly all property located within the county. The assessor must also prepare a supplemental tax roll, process business, farm, and other property statements, and conduct an audit program, along with conducting appraisals of special properties, possessory interests, and mineral properties, boats, aircraft, and mobile homes. An annual assessment roll is created and certified. The clerk recorder provides various services, including property recordings and certified copies, in order to promote public trust and alleviate potential fraud. The clerk recorder is also the commissioner of marriages for the county. There are a total of 34 FTEs for final budget. This includes the addition of one clerk recorder assistant level 1-2, the deletion of the clerk recorder assistant level 3. Final budget changes for the assessor include a decrease in salary employee benefits of $48,749. This is attributed to the reduction in health insurance rates. Next slide, please. Final budget changes for the clerk recorder include a decrease in salary employee benefits of $14,624. This is due to the reduction in health insurance rates as well, bringing net revenue to $1,889,347, with net expenditures of $4,397,750. Net county cost at $2,508,403. This is a 27% increase from last year's adopted budget, or a $528,776 increase. And this is mainly attributed to the increase in salary and employee benefits. Requesting a temporary due pass.
Supervisor Neves, Valley?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
If you don't mind, Madam Assessor is a duly elected official. Is there anything you want to comment on your budget or add to it? Thank you. Just want to give you the opportunity.
Veronica? Bring it down, right
Right
to your, lower.
Right there.
Is there a button that you can hit on that to turn that so our speak?
Okay. Does that sound better?
Yes.
No. Oh, okay. This is the Elections Department Budget Unit 155000 on budget pages 85 through 88 and lives in the general fund. The Elections Department holds the responsibility of educating the public, central committees, political parties, community organizations, and other interested parties in the function and administration of an election. The Elections Department is responsible for administering the primary, general, and special elections in the county. There are a total of 6 full-time employees for final budget. The final budget changes include an increase in intergovernmental revenue of $15,789, and this is due to the Help America Vote Act, commonly referred to as the HAVA grant. This also includes a decrease in salary employee benefits of $7,130, and this is due to the health rate insurance reductions, bringing the net revenue to $35,789, with net expenditures at $1,306,121 and a net county cost of $1,270,332. This represents an increase of 31% from last year's adopted budget, or a $302,989 increase, and this is due to only having one scheduled election. Requesting a temporary due pass.
Thank you. Supervisor Neves, Supervisor Robinson, please continue.
This is contributions to other funds, tribal gaming, budget unit 178000 on pages 89 and 91 of the budget book. This is a general fund budget unit. This budget unit captures the revenue received by the county from the Santa Rosa Rancheria Tachiyoca tribe. Per memorandum of understanding where the county provides the tribe with law enforcement and fire services on tribal land. Revenue received in this budget unit is then transferred to the sheriff's office and the fire departments. There are no final budget changes to report. Net revenue is $900,000 with net expenditures of $900,000 and zero net county cost. This remains unchanged from last year's adopted budget, where the fire department receives $700,000 and the sheriff's office receives $200,000, requesting a temporary due pass.
Supervisor Neves, Robinson, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. We can just go back real quick with Mr. Villa in the audience. Mr. Villa, if the governor's special election happens in November for the redistricting, is there a plan B that we need to have ready for monies for you, or within your budget you could afford to execute that election?
And we were on call on Friday, and they're telling everybody to please submit your budget to the state for reimbursement. They will have money for you, but don't cut it low.
So good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thanks for the question, Mr. Valle. We are having an election on the 4th. So the ACA was signed Friday. So SB 280, which I'm reviewing, is going to go into effect last Friday. So we'll be having November 4th election. Part of the bill is including funding to the counties to pay for the election. I've submitted our estimate. It's about just over $500,000 that I requested. So I'm expecting that money to come to us. We're asking for an advance, just like it happened in 2021. We're asking for the money ahead of time, but who knows if that's going to happen. But regardless, we'll get the money.
Yeah, and they're telling us that make sure you don't put yourself short, because if you do have extra, you can carry it over to the next election, which is in June.
Right. So same consequence happened in, or same situation happened in 2021. So we asked for the funding, they gave us funding, any remaining balance you use for future elections. So we were able to submit a healthy request. So we'll see what happens.
Thank you. Matthew, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, we're going to move to the contribution to other funds. It's going to live on page 92 of your book. This does live within the general fund. And this budget represents the general fund contributions that are applied to non-general fund funds. So this is where we account for the transfer of all of the Williamson Act and hazardous waste tax revenue to departments. And so Williamson Act, that's the state backfill dollars that we get due to the reduced property taxes that we get for the parcels that are under contract for Williamson Act. And then the hazardous waste taxes that we get there, that's part of some mitigation measures for us to actually host that facility there in the Kettleman Hills. And so that's why we get that money as well. So this budget accounts for Public Works internal service fund charges for building maintenance and surveyor that are not directly billed to a particular department. The rest of it is picked up here, as well as some discretionary transfers as well. So with that, in this budget of the hazardous waste taxes that we have anticipated, we're anticipating that to be $1.4 million. And of that, $650,000 is going to the accumulative capital outlay account. $100,000 is going to the roads fund to go ahead and fund the Kettleman City curb, gutter, and sidewalk project. $150,000 is going towards the Kettleman City water treatment plant operations and maintenance trust, and $500,000 is going to the fire fund. And then of the $1.9 million in Williamson Act revenue that we anticipate, $7,550 of that is going to the accumulative capital outlay fund. $516,700 of that is going to the fire fund, of which $315,141 is going towards Fire's budget unit 241000, and the balance of $201,559 is going to go to their Office of Emergency Services budget unit, which is 243000. Continuing on, $500,000 of the Williamson Act revenue is going towards the principal payment for the Human Services Agency modular building debt. $475,750 is going towards the 2014 Assembly Bill 900 jail bonds, and $400,000 is going towards the 2005 jail bond refunding. So with that, we do have a couple of final budget changes. We have a decrease in other charges of $42,015. And this is due to all of the final budget changes that occurred in the Public Works Department for building maintenance as a result of the health insurance rate decreases. Again, these are the charges that are not able to be directly billed out to specific departments. And then lastly, we do have a decrease in other financing uses of $1,268,628. And this is attributed to all of the final budget changes that occurred within the fire department. For a couple of reasons. The one reason being the reduction in health insurance rates and the increase in revenue due to the new service contract with Avenel bringing additional revenue into that department. So with that, we do have net revenue of $2,048,410 and net expenditures of $11,274,248, resulting in a net county cost to the general fund of $9,225,838. This is a 29% decrease from last year's adopted budget, or a decrease of $3,693,950. And this is attributed to three different things. attributed to one is the $4 million in one-time funding that was transferred to the capital outlay account last year that is not being transferred this year. It's also due to a $600,000 increase in contributions to the fire fund and a $300,000 decrease in anticipated revenues on the hazardous waste taxes side. Respectfully request a temporary due pass.
We need to go to public hearing. On to after.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, question before we close, Sarah, if you don't mind. On the 650,000 capital outlay fund, is there a detailed breakdown of that?
No, that's just every year a portion of that goes to the capital outlay fund to continue to fund the projects there. We do have
Is there a list of those projects? There used to be.
Yes, they're not on this particular slide, but later in the slide, when we get to the cumulative capital outlay budget units, there is a detailed breakdown of all of the current projects that are programmed in this budget here.
Okay, but will it be broken down by just hazardous waste or the other things you listed under the 1.9 in Williamson?
So on that, there's going to be a chart, and on that chart off to the right, it shows what funding stream funds which particular project. And any of the projects on that chart that say general fund, that's going to be funded with funds that are currently living in the cumulative capital outlay fund, which that money is going to contribute towards.
I'm asking, one, I ask you for that every year in an email, but aside from that, my question is when we get to the point, we see some debt for the Craig Better Sidewalk project and funding, are you going to see any impacts to that capital outlay fund? Meaning, let's say the payment on that is $100,000 per year, for example. Would you see a hit to the outlay fund or what we already have every year built into the well, I see you have the 100,000 for the roads for the Kevin City drainage project. Are we going to keep adding to that, or are you going to pull the payment?
The plan is to pull the payment out of the account, and the way it works for the capital outlay fund, it's whatever's remaining. So we first prioritize fire fund, the debts that we're paying, and then whatever's left over, we move to capital. So those payments are never impacted. They come first.
Thank you. That's refreshing to hear.
Yeah, no.
That's very refreshing. Okay. But so in the future, can the board get more of a heads up on that for things for our district? Because I know the department heads, they get first crack at that. But if there's anything else that my colleagues are looking for too, I'd like for that. I say them because look, I'm very happy with this moving forward. But for anything in their districts, I think that's the funding right there to look at and look at it for department heads. I don't mean that disrespectfully because y'all have been getting a shot at this money long before I ever got here. But because when we're looking at redoing somebody's tile in their office or painting their office, I'd rather see the board get a shot at some real deliveries and impacts to the districts and then whatever's left. Thank you.
Okay, it is 10:03 now, and we'll start our public hearing with administration. Gary or Matt, who's going?
It's actually going to be Veronica.
Veronica.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman again, and members of the board. I'm Veronica Mello, Administrative Analyst at the County Administrative Office. On June 21st, 2005, your board adopted ordinance number 633 for developmental impact fees. To collect fees annually, staff must present an updated construction schedule and an annual report for impact fees. In your packet, you have the agenda item, a copy of the resolution, along with several exhibits. Exhibit A is a construction schedule. Ordinance number 633 requires the development of a construction schedule to be reviewed by your board annually. Exhibit B is the fee table, which is updated by using the Engineering News Record Construction Cost Index, commonly referred to as CCI, for the City of Los Angeles and the City of San Francisco. Staff recommends the public facility fee increase of 1.93%. This was determined by utilizing the CCI percentage change from May 2024 to May 2025. It is important to note that this does not include a fee increase for the library due to the recently adopted Nexus study. The county collects public facility fees from Hanford, Lemoore, Corcoran, and Avenel. I'd like to go over the fee increase over the past 6 years. In 2019, CCI called for a 2.16 increase, which your board chose to adopt. In 2020, CCI called for a 3.58 fee increase. Your board chose not to adopt a fee, but remain at the 2019 levels. In 2021, CCI called for a 1.59% increase, and your board chose not to adopt a fee increase due to wage and construction cost increases. In 2022, CCI called for a 12.61% increase, and your board chose not to adopt a fee increase due to the economic uncertainty and a predicted recession. It was discussed that it should be looked at in a year. And in 2023, staff did not bring an agenda item for your board's consideration of an impact fee increase due to the Nexus study being underway. In 2024, CCI called for a 6.22% increase, and your board chose to adopt a 5% increase due to the metrics for each city being far off from each other. Going over to Exhibit C, Impact Fee Financial Report, it shows the history of the financials for the developmental impact fees. Since fiscal year 2005-2006, we have accumulated about $14,302,591 in impact fees, and this includes interest. This also includes revenue transferred in the amount of $35,265 in fiscal year 22-23. To date, $6,786,410 has been spent or encumbered, leaving a balance of $7,516,180 as of June 30th, 2025. With that being said, this brings me to Exhibit D, Public Facility Fee Change Calculations. This was updated using the average of the Engineering News Record Construction Cost Index from May 2024 to May 2025. Let's go over the history of the projects spent by impact fees. These are the completed projects. Miners Advocate and District Attorney relocation began in 2007-2008 and involved relocating the Miners Advocate office to a larger location and remodeling the existing Miners Advocate office space for use by the District Attorney. These two projects were completed in fiscal year 2008 and 2009. The project was funded by $163,905 in public protection fees. Morgue relocation began in fiscal year 2011-2012. This project was funded by $390,000 in public protection fees. The jail expansion project began in fiscal year 2011-2012. This project was funded by approximately $2.3 million in public protection fees and was completed in fiscal year 2015-2016. The approximate total construction cost was $33.2 million. The Juvenile Center remodel project construction began in fiscal year 2021-22. A total of $3,718,340 in impact fees were used to fund this project. The project is approximately $20.1 million in total and was completed last fall. In progress in future projects, Sheriff's Evidence Space and SWAT Dive Team Facility. This project is in design phase with a total of $100,000 in Sheriff Patrol and Investigation impact fees utilized in the fiscal year 24-25 to fund this project. The Moore Library remodel. This project is also in design phase with a total of $1,628,774 from the library impact fees set aside for this project. There are future projects that have yet to begin and are included in the construction schedule. See Exhibit A, Fee Construction Schedule. As far as the required 5-year report, the next one will be due later this year, as the current one was completed in 2020 and adopted by your board in 2021. The next report is due later this year and will be presented to your board for adoption in 2026. For this hearing, the required 14-day notices were mailed out on August 9th. Notices were mailed to the Building Industry Association of Tulare and Kings County, the gas company, the cities of Corcoran, Hanford, Lemoore, and Avenel. We also had the notice published in the Hanford Sentinel on August 9th, 2025. With that said, staff is recommending that your board conduct a public hearing to receive testimony on the developmental impact fees, which include a construction schedule, a public facility fee, and proposed adjustment to the fees. Adopt a resolution approving the new construction schedule and an annual inflationary increase in the county's impact fees, and select one of the following options in relation to adjusting the development impact fee. Option 1, adjust the development impact fee amounts based on the percentage change in engineering news record construction cost index, a 1.93% increase, having the new fees become effective October 24th, 2025. Option 2, adjust the development impact fee amounts based on a percentage determined by your board. Option 3, adopt no fee increase and impact fee levels will remain the same at the levels of November 9th, 2024. This concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Thank you.
Just point of clarification, that was the second public
Yes.
hearing that we just presented.
So do any questions from the board? If no question, I'll open up for public hearing at this time. Do we have any written comments?
I have no written correspondence. I have no cards, and no one online has their hand raised.
Anybody in the audience? have any comments? Okay, bring it back to the board for direction.
Mr. Chair, I know we've always taken the average of San Francisco and LA and we divide that in half, but really when you look at it, we're probably looking at less than one. So I think this year, so I have it's doing a little bit of a lot of work for a little bit of it.
Okay, we got the motion by Supervisor Neff for item number 3.
I'll second that.
Second by Supervisor Valley. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Nevs.
Yes.
Richard Valley. Doug Verboon. Rusty Robinson.
Okay, everyone absent. So do we go to the A public hearing? So we'll go to the public hearing again for administration, Terry Martinez or Matthew Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Human Services Agency is requesting a 10% transfer of the health realignment funds and a 10% transfer of the behavioral health realignment funds to the Social Services Realignment Trust account for this upcoming fiscal year of 25-26. And so under the Welfare and Institution Code, they do allow for certain transfers up to 10% to be moved between the various sub-accounts based on need. And so over the last about 25 years, your board has adopted various transfers between the 3 departments that best meet the needs for the county and have the least impacts financially here for your board. So over the last few years, well, actually since traditionally the 10% transfers have always been there. However, once the pandemic hit, that actually got reduced to 5% on the behavioral health side and got totally suspended on the public health side. And then as the federal government stepped up and increased their cost share on a lot of these mandated entitlement programs, all of the transfers between behavioral health, public health, and the Human Services Agency, they suspended since the federal government continued and increased their contributions. So those weren't needed. However, that increased federal assistance ended at the end of calendar year 2023. And so last year, your board approved the traditional 10% transfer of the behavioral health and public health realignment funds into the social services subaccount to fund the caseload growth for the Human Services Agency and their entitlement programs. So the caseload growth and the expenditure growth for those cases are not keeping up with the dedicated revenue sources that the state outlined for those particular services. So again, this is just one of the mechanisms at your board's disposal to go ahead and allocate those fundings accordingly to have the least amount of impact here at the county while still meeting our obligations everywhere else. And so without this transfer being done, there would be an approximate general fund impact of $1,071,918. So right now, that 10% transfer between behavioral health and public health is going to supplement the shortfall at the Human Services Agency. If that's not done, that shortfall still needs to be made up somehow because those are entitlement programs and benefits that still need to be paid for that would essentially need to be paid for out of the general fund. So this is something that's been at the discretion of your board that's been exercised over the last roughly 25 years. And so with that, none of these transfers on the behavioral health and public health side will cause any adverse impacts in their capacity to meet their current operations as outlined in the budget here. So with that, that concludes my presentation. And the recommendation before your board is to conduct a public hearing to receive testimony regarding a realignment fund transfer and find that the transfer of realignment funds is the most cost-effective use of available resources to maximize client outcomes. Approve the 10% transfer of realignment revenues deposited into the Public Health Realignment Trust to be directed to the Social Services Trust account for fiscal year 25-26, and approve the 10% transfer of realignment revenues deposited into the Behavioral Health Realignment Trust to be directed to the Social Services Trust account for fiscal year 25-26. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Any questions for Matthew? No questions, so we're going to bring back the public hearing and open it up. Do you have any written correspondence?
I have no written correspondence. No one has filled out a speaker card and no one online has their hand.
Anybody in the audience? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we have a motion to approve by Supervisor Robinson and second by Supervisor Neves. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Nevs.
Yes.
Richard Valley. Deb Verboen.
Yes.
Rusty Robinson.
Okay, 4 in favor, 1 absent. We'll go back to our regularly scheduled meeting at this time. Does anybody need to use restroom breaks at this time? We're good? All right, so Giselle, all yours.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I could, did we get temporary due pass for the contribution to other funds, budget unit 179?
Neves and Robinson.
Perfect, thank you.
This is supportive organizations, budget unit 180000, living within the general fund. This can be found on page 95 of your recommended budget books. This budget reflects the funding support provided to non-political organizations whose programs provide a specific countywide benefit. The supportive organization budget tracks the revenue and expenditures as a county share of the cost for Kings County Economic Development Corporation, which seeks to encourage business and industrial development in the county. The county and city share in the total cost for the Economic Development Corporation on a population basis. Final budget changes include an increase in services and supplies of $641,500, and this is due to the reclassification of Economic Development Corporation expenses to the correct account and Mid-Kings River Groundwater Sustainability Agency support. There's no revenue in this budget, bringing the net expenditures to $641,500 and net county cost matching at $641,500. This is a 1,110% increase from last year's adopted budget, or a $588,500 increase. The significant increase in this budget is attributed to the county's expanded role in supporting the Mid-Kings River GSA following its complete restructuring. With the Community Development Agency Director now serving as General Manager, CDA has taken on ongoing responsibilities, including the Groundwater Sustainability Plan update to address the GSA's probationary status with the State Water Board. This level of involvement represents a continuing ongoing cost to the county moving forward. Requesting a temporary due pass. Now I'll pass the floor to Veronica.
This slide here, the American Rescue Plan Act, commonly referred to as ARPA, budget unit 110910, on page 97 of the recommended budget book and lives in the general fund. This budget unit accounts for the county's use of the American Rescue Plan Act allocation, the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund legislation, part of the American Rescue Plan Act, was signed into law by President Biden on March 11, 2021. The bill included $65.1 billion in direct flexible aid to every county in America. Kings County received $29,706,802. The funds were intended to provide support in responding to the impact of COVID-19 and their efforts to contain COVID-19 in their communities, residents, and businesses. Pursuant to the U.S. Department of Treasury, Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund must obligate funds through December 31st, 2024. This deadline was met and all funds have been obligated, bringing net revenue to $545,476 with net expenditures of $545,476 and a zero net county cost. This is a 94% decrease from last year's adopted budget, or a $9,154,153 decrease. And this is due to the completion of adopted ARPA projects. There's one active project for retention bonuses for the prosecutors and safety employees. Requesting a temporary due pass.
And next we have the March floods budget unit. It's going to be found on page 100, living within the general fund here. We do not have any final budget changes here in this budget. So we do have net revenue of 3 million and an equal net expenditure of 3 million, leaving no net county cost to the general fund. And just to note, these are not general fund dollars or general fund revenue here. It just lives within the general fund. These are going to be the FEMA reimbursements for any and all expenses that we incur related to the flooding events that occurred back in 2023. The net county cost remains unchanged from last fiscal year. And again, there's no impact to the general fund. So request temporary due pass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next department for your board's consideration this morning is the Public Guardian / Veteran Services Office, which is located in Budget Unit 203-100 and is found on page 102 of your recommended budget book. And this department lives within the general fund. The department is composed of two distinct functions, Public Guardian and Veteran Services. The Public Guardian portion is responsible for the management and control of approximately 90 court order conservatees and 70 representative payee program clients. The Public Guardian ensures that conservatees and payees have adequate food, clothing, and shelter, and is responsible through the Superior Court action for the appropriate management of conservatees' assets and representative payee program Social Security funds. On the Veteran Services Office side, it is the hub of veterans activities within the county and assists the approximately 8,876 veterans of Kings County, their dependents and survivors, as well as the numerous active military personnel who are transitioning out of active duty and accessing Veterans Affairs benefits. There are 10 positions for this department in fiscal year 25-26 and 2 recommended changes. First is a decrease in salaries and employee benefits of $15,534 due to the reduction of county health insurance rates, as well as the increase in services supplies of $1,200 to support a future event regarding the Kings County Freedom Memorial Wall. The net revenues for this department is $313,500. The net expenditures is $905,870 with a net county cost of $592,370. This represents a 30% increase from last year's adopted budget, or $137,123 increase, mainly attributed to the increases in department expenses, such as employee salaries and benefits, in addition to membership fees and utility rates. At this time, we respectfully request a temporary due pass.
Thank you, Robinson.
Yes, that's for both aspects of this office.
Can you come to the podium, please? Can't hear much anything, but you guys have tried 5 times for my DA on here, and they just shot me down again last month. But
well, we'll be like a shot
shake board meetings, and he's saying I can't hear to the DA. Hey, Mr. Howe, thank you for everything you do for veterans and on the Public Guardian side too. I know that's a tremendous amount of work there. But I just want to I know CEO Martinez and staff. They took care of you on your budget and everything, but I always want to ask you if you have everything you need to service and look after the veterans in Kings County.
Yes, we absolutely do. Obviously, how do I want to put this? Obviously, in an optimal situation, we would have more state revenue coming down, so that we could get the word out that we actually exist. Ran into a situation called Assemblymember Macedo's office on SB 694, which is a bill trying to limit the activities of unaccredited claims representatives. We refer to them as claim sharks. Talked to a woman on the phone whose husband is a Marine Corps veteran, and she said that they ended up being taken advantage of by one of these organizations that is unaccredited and operating illegally. But there's loopholes, and so they're able to continue doing that. It's for another conversation. But the point was, she said, we had absolutely no idea that county veteran service offices existed when this started. And so in a perfect world, we would have more money in our budget to do that. We're trying to work at a state level through CalVet to make sure that that happens and get some money so that we can get the word out that we exist, so there are fewer people taken advantage of. But with regard to here in the county, we have everything we need. In fact, we graciously received some extra help money, so we could bring back a gentleman who is my senior veteran service representative, Kevin Renner. I'm sure you know him. So he could help us do some work, but we have absolutely everything we need, and we're ready to rock and roll.
Thank you. And the reason, one of the reasons why I asked that is because here in the budget book, it talked about some bills that you had and some objectives, and one of them is continue efforts to explore the establishment of part-time satellite offices in Adnan and Portland. Are those dual row offices you were looking, or were those going to be veteran focused?
Those would be veteran focused.
Okay. Then it says the objective is not completed due to unforeseen staffing challenges. And then there's another objective in here too that was not met. So I guess is that due to what you already mentioned, the support of funding not from the state or at our level?
No, I think that those challenges, Supervisor, were more specifically on number one in establishing the satellite offices. The challenge was we were bringing on a new staff member. It took a little longer to get that staff member up and running. There were some dynamics within the office that we needed to get straightened out in order to be able to provide our core service here in the Kings County Government Center, and then looking at being able to train the individuals to a point where they're able to operate in a satellite office by themselves without having the support of someone there to kind of, they need to get their training wheels off before we can do that. And I was a little aggressive in thinking that we were going to be able to accomplish that last year. So it's not a funding issue. It's more of a personnel issue and a training issue.
Well, I appreciate your outreach to those communities. If there's anything I can do to be helpful, please let me know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'd like to attend some, even if you get going on a mobile office out there once a week with some kind of mobile setup. I'd love to be out there and help, just volunteer to get the word out to veterans that service is actually services there.
We'll take a look at that. We'll work with admin on that and see what we can come up with in the coming year.
Thank you, sir. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the board's support.
Thank you. We got temporary due pass of that, Nabs and Robinson, and move on now to Veronica. Good morning, Veronica. Thank you for being here.
Once again, let me fix this here.
Yeah, you got to get real close to the
I
microphone.
know, right? Okay, here we go. This is Law Library Budget Unit 210200. The Law Library is a free legal resource and self-help center for attorneys, self-represented litigants, and Kings County residents. This is on page 107 of the budget book. Library lives in its own fund, 600130, and there are 0.8 FTEs for final budget. The final budget changes include a decrease in salary employee benefits of $879 due to the reduction in health insurance rates, bringing net revenue to $106,400 and net expenditures of $107,394, bringing the unreimbursed cost to $994. This is a 9% increase in expenditures from last year's adopted budget, or an $840 increase. And this is mainly attributed to the increase in salary employee benefits, requesting a temporary due pass.
Nabs, Robinson. Is all yours?
This is the district attorney's budget, budget units 216000 through 216900. It can be found on page 109 of your recommended budget books and lives within the general fund. The district attorney is an elected official vested with the constitutional and statutory power to attend the courts and exercise discretion to initiate and conduct all prosecution for all public offenses in the County of Kings. To fulfill the district attorney's constitutional and statutory requirements, the district attorney maintains an office tasked with prosecuting criminal cases, investigating crime, assisting victims and witnesses throughout the court process. In vigorously prosecuting its cases, the district attorney office balances public safety, victims' rights, and prosecutorial ethics. There are 68 positions in the final budget for fiscal year 2025-26, including a transfer of half a position DA investigator from budget unit 216000 to budget unit 216400, and one unfunded position of a process server at the request of the department, which was previously a maintained vacant position. Final budget changes include the following. In the prosecution budget for 216000, there was a decrease in salaries and employee benefits of $147,487 due to the decrease in health insurance rates and unfunding one position. And there's an increase in services and supplies of $15,368 due to the addition of an office subscription utilized by attorneys, offset by unfunding one position. Next slide, please. Final budget changes continue to victim witness 216300, where there was a decrease in salaries and employee benefits of $9,191 due to the decrease in health insurance rates. In budget unit 216400, AB 109, there was a decrease in state intergovernmental revenue of $10,325 due to the revenue offset for all final budget changes, and a decrease in salaries and employee benefits of $10,325 due to the decrease in health insurance rates. In budget unit 216500, state prison, there was a decrease in salaries and employee benefits of $19,043 due to the decrease in health insurance rates. In budget unit 216800, miscellaneous grants, there was a decrease in state intergovernmental revenue of $3,407 due to the revenue offset for all final budget changes, and a decrease in salaries and employee benefits of $3,407 due to the decrease in health insurance rates. Next slide, please. In budget unit 216900, child abduction unit, there was a decrease in state intergovernmental revenue of $3,253 due to revenue offset for all final budget changes, and a decrease in salaries and employee benefits of $3,253 due to the decrease in health insurance rates. This brings our net revenue to $5,728,652. Net expenditures at $13,728,414, and a net county cost of $7,999,762. This is a 32% increase from last year's adopted budget, or a $1,922,685 increase, mainly attributed to salary increases. Requesting a temporary due pass.
Moving on, we have the sheriff's budget, which was budget units 22000.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Connected to- Do you have comments you want to make?
I just wanted to extend my gratitude and thanks to this board. You have always met the needs of the DA's office, and because of your support, we've been able to achieve the success that we've had over the last year. And I know that the budget is in a state of flex, but I assure you that we're going to continue to work as hard as we have with the resources that you've given us. And I just want to thank you.
Okay, Matthew, it's all yours.
Yes, moving on to the sheriff's budget units 220000 through 229900, found on page 115, living within the general fund. There are 320 positions in fiscal year 25-26, and that includes the transfer of a portion of a sheriff's commander from their court security budget to their radio communications budget. For final budget changes in the sheriff's budget unit 220000, there's a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $30,392 due to the reduction in health insurance rates, and an increase in services and supplies of $46,000 to go ahead and restore some of the cuts that were made recommended to ensure that the current service contracts that the sheriff has in this budget unit can be fully realized. And then moving on to the radio communications budget, that's budget unit 220600. There's a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $20,498 due to the health insurance rate decreases, and then an increase in services and supplies of $30,000 due to expenses related to dispatch scheduling software. And moving on to the Major Crimes Task Force budget, which is 221200. There's a decrease in other intergovernmental revenue of $640 to offset final budget changes. In a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $1,600 due to the reduction in health insurance rates, and a decrease in interfund transfers of $534,000, again, an offset for all of the final budget changes. Moving on to the AB 109 operations budget, which is budget unit 221500. There's an increase in intergovernmental revenue state of $116,699 as a revenue offset for all final budget changes in this budget unit. We have a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $83,301 for reductions of health insurance rate decreases, and an increase in services and supplies of $200,000 to account for a reentry program contract that your board approved previously. Moving on to the field operations budget, which is budget unit 222000. We have an increase in other financing sources of $136,204 to account for an officer wellness grant that your board approved them to receive that will go towards some fitness and wellness equipment for staff. We have a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $118,831 for a reduction in health insurance rates. An increase in services and supplies of $32,204. This is a combination of some voluntary reductions that the department did to account for some of the final budget changes accounted for across the entire department, not just this particular budget unit, as well as the purchase of some of the smaller items from the officer wellness grant that your board approved, and then some fingerprinting and coroner software expenses. And lastly, we have an increase in capital assets of $75,000 to account for the larger purchases of the fitness equipment from the officer wellness grant. Moving on to the Rural Crimes Task Force budget unit, which is 222100. There's a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $6,327 for the reduction of health insurance rates. Moving on to the AB 443 operations budget unit, which is 222200. Again, a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $5,842, again, due to the reduction of health insurance rates. Moving on to the court security budget, we are showing, that's budget unit 222300. We're showing an increase in intergovernmental revenue state of $65,000 based on anticipated billing increases in this coming fiscal year 25-26. Again, as the sheriff was before your board and mentioned in open session earlier, and an increase in charges for service of $350,000, again, based on that anticipated billing increase previously mentioned. And then lastly, in this budget unit, we do have a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $26,222 to account for the health insurance rate reductions. And then moving on to the detentions budget unit, which is 223000. We have a decrease in other financing sources of $200,000 to account for expense reductions that occurred and recommended that the revenue offset for those weren't properly accounted for. So we'll go ahead and accounting for those now. We have a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $153,811 for health insurance rate decreases, and then an increase in services and supplies of $210,000 to go ahead and account for some CalAIM expenses and increases in training. Moving on to the jail kitchen budget unit, which is 223040. We have a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $10,450 to account for the health insurance rate reductions, and an increase in capital assets of $8,500 to account for a board-approved purchase of a garbage disposal for the jail kitchen. And then moving on, we have a decrease in intra-fund transfers of $1,950. And this is a cost-applied mechanism to account for all final budget changes that happened within this budget unit. Moving on to the Animal Services Field budget unit, which is going to be budget unit 227700. We have a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $3,516 to account for the reduction in health insurance rates. And the last budget unit here, an Animal Services Shelter, which is budget unit 227710. We have an increase in intergovernmental revenue of $185,903, and this is primarily driven by a cost allocation adjustment due to the fact that the city of Lemoore no longer contracts with us for these services, so those costs get shifted to the other participating agencies. So lastly, in this budget unit, we have a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $5,645 to account for the health insurance rate decreases. All of those final budget changes lead us to a net revenue of $32,982,492 and a net expenditure of $69,389,423, resulting in a net county cost to the general fund of $36,406,931, which is a 9% increase from last year's budget, or an increase of $2,986,256, primarily attributed to the increase in salary and employee benefits. With that, requestfully respective temporary due pass.
Thank you. And President Adams and myself, and I'd like to thank the sheriff for his 15 years of service here and creating this wonderful big budget we have. You've done a great job providing services and safety for our community. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Dave Robinson, Kings County Sheriff. So Supervisor Valley, just to get ahead of your question, there's always more that we want. However, as you saw from the first couple of slides, one thing that I'm really proud of this board of supervisors and county administration for doing was really addressing the salary and benefit package for all county employees the last couple of years. And when you see an increase year over year of $20 million to salary and benefits, that means that there was an increase in the package, which is really cool. With that said, that means the rest of us kind of go back and work our magic to try to make sure we don't ask for too much going forward. And that's what we did in this budget year. Cassie, Tiffany, Renee, Amy, and Sally, I can't thank them enough for everything they do every year to help put our budget together and get it to this point. I wore my suit. My first budget, I wore my suit. In between, I didn't wear my suit. So that's why I'm in my suit today. First budget, I felt it very respectful to this board to wear my suit. And last budget, I feel it's very respectful to this board to wear my suit. So that's why I'm in my suit today. I don't have any glaring requests. I'm super proud of the things that we've accomplished working with county admin and the board of supervisors over the years. I'm super excited. This is my last budget meeting to sit through. Right. And because they're super boring, to be honest with you. We sit out here, but it's super boring. But part of the process, we've done a lot over the years. I saw a recent article about a local jurisdiction, spending $6 million on an architect only to build a new police station. And I think to myself, wow, we built the whole thing for like 8.2 million, but I guess escalation or something. I have no idea. One thing I do want to talk about that was a change in this budget. I think it made it in, Kerry and Matt can clarify, but the car wash back by the Cal Vans building, we're going to be taking that over and turning it into an inmate work program. Many of you are aware that we do a detail program and auto detail program at the jail, but you have to kind of come through our secure area. So we're going to be in the future moving that out to the non-secure area. And we're going to open that car wash up to all county employees where you can come through and get a discounted car wash, which then that money will go back into the inmate welfare fund to help fund those additional programs that we do for inmates in our facility to try to, get them their feet out the door and on a positive note. And so that's one thing that I think is super exciting coming forward. We have the new evidence building going in next to the old or in the old Cal Vans building. And that's super exciting. And that'll get us completely off of Lacey Boulevard. And so there's still some things that are coming where I won't be around to see those things come to a finish, but it's been a great run and I've had a great time doing it. And, you have a great county administrator and her team. And it's, on the first or second slide, when they showed the 15 years, I've been here for all those years. And I know that you two have as well. And so, it's been a good run. I think my first budget, I want to say we were at about $33 million. And so I appreciate the board continually increasing. Obviously, we're almost $70 million now. That's a lot of money to keep track of for one fiscal manager and two account techs. Just I'll put that on your radar. I'm so impressed that they can keep track of $70 million with a staff of 3, and kudos to them. So I've talked enough. This becomes a long day, although you'll all recall that we used to do this over a couple days at one point in those 15 years. And so I love that it's narrowed it down to about, 3 hours at least. So thank you.
Asking questions.
Right. It was mostly your fault that it drug out that long. But thank you to the board, and I just really appreciate it. And I'm excited for my next chapter in life, and I'm excited that this is my last budget. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your service.
Mr. Chair, could I also add too, thank you, Sheriff, for everything you've done. I remember the suit from your first one.
That's the same suit?
It might be the same suit. I tried to keep my my fatigue or my fitness level about the same as when I took over. So I'm still fitting into the same clothes 15 years ago. But I do believe I've upgraded the suit at some point.
Nice.
At least the tie.
We noted it when you walked in. We thought you was going to announce your run for state assembly.
Well, redistricting, as an independent, I might have a shot at something.
Look at it. But on that note, the next sheriff is really going to have to look at the groundwork that you laid as far as being so active in Sacramento as you were in your statewide sheriff's association, even at one point being the president of the entire statewide sheriff's association. And that's something that I think, hopefully we don't have to ask of the next sheriff. Hopefully they see that you've done that and the bar was raised that way, and that because of your presence there, that not only help with bringing real monies back from the county, but effective legislation, maybe some legislation that would have been bad for the public, the safety of the public that never even reached the floor of the Assembly or the Senate. And not to mention whatever legislation you guys worked hard to get passed. So that's going to be missed, and hopefully the next sheriff picks that up and runs with it.
My consulting fees are a little higher than what you pay me now, just so you know. But no, Supervisor Valley, I really appreciate it. And, many of us traveled up there together and spent a lot of time up there, and, you got to work the numbers up there. And if you work the numbers up there, you can really get a lot accomplished, but it does take time away from the hometown. So, but thank you for that. And just thanks to all of you. Thank you.
We got a temporary pass from Supervisor Nabs and myself, and we'll go on now to Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Up next in our exciting presentation for you this morning is the Probation Department, which is located in budget units 233000 and 234800. It's located on page 120 of your recommended budget book, and all 7 budget units live within the general fund. Probation provides public safety and protection, enforces court orders with all probationers, and provides support and case management to clients to assist in their individual rehabilitation. Probation also provides mandated services in the operation of a juvenile detention, commitment, and secure track facility. There are 158 positions for fiscal year 25-26. There were no adds and deletes, but there were several baseline transfers in the amount of 16 positions, which I could read into the record if you like, but if not, we'll move on to the next slide. Thank you. Discussing your final budget changes before you this morning, starting with the Juvenile Treatment Center, which lives in budget unit 233000. There were 3 final budget changes. First was a decrease in salaries and employee benefits in the amount of $70,369 due to the reduction of county health insurance rates, as well as an increase in services supplies of $28,586 due to program adjustments for required spending such as school supplies for youth, purchase orders, and uniform allowances. We also saw an increase in other changes, which were expenses tied to CalAIM funding in the amount of $675,230. Up next in probation, AB 109, 233100, there were 3 final budget changes from your recommended budget. First was an increase in intergovernmental revenue on the state side in the amount of $111,209, which was revenue to offset and support the final budget changes outlined below. These include a decrease in salaries and employee benefits in the amount of $25,941 due to a reduction of county health insurance rates, as well as an increase in services supplies in the amount of $137,150 to support EMS, which is electronic monitoring and equipment. Next slide, please. Up next in probation, SB 678, which lives in budget unit 233200, there were 3 final budget changes. First was an increase in intergovernmental revenue on the state side in the amount of $19,501, which was revenue to offset and support the final budget changes outlined below. And these include a decrease in salaries and employee benefits of $4,999 due to reduction in county health insurance rates. And the second change was an increase in services and supplies of $24,500, which was incentives for adult programming, which is no county cost. Moving on to the next budget unit, which was probation YOBG, which stands for Youthful Offender Block Grant, which lives in budget unit 233600. There were 4 final budget changes. First was an increase in other financing sources in the amount of $77,673, which was revenue to offset and support the final budget changes outlined below. A decrease in salaries and employee benefits of $7,007 due to the reduction of county health insurance rates, an increase of services and supplies in the amount of $12,050 for incentives for programming and juvenile work program, which again is no county cost, as well as the increase in capital assets in the amount of $72,630, which is a rollover balance for a vehicle approved in fiscal year 24-25. Moving forward in the presentation to the next budget unit, Juvenile Secure Track, which lives in budget unit 233700, there were 3 final budget changes. The first was a decrease in other financing sources in the amount of $361,940, which is revenue to offset and support the final budget changes outlined below. A decrease in salaries and employee benefits in the amount of $386,774 due to the reduction of county health insurance rates, as well as other program adjustments. And finally, an increase in service and supplies in the amount of $24,834, which is programming expenses for youth, such as tools, incentives, and publications. Next slide, please. Closing out on this department, we have the probation admin account, which is in 234,000. There were 4 final budget changes, which include an increase in intergovernmental revenue on the state side in the amount of $1,776, which was adjustment for state revenue to be received. This also includes a decrease in salaries and employee benefits in the amount of $72,222 due to the reduction of county health insurance rates, an increase in services and supplies due to training for staff in the amount of $33,020, as well as an increase in capital assets in the amount of $18,909 for a purchase order for firearms. It should be noticed that this firearm purchase went to your board on November 26, 2024, and the cost will be offset by the trade-in credit. However, the receipt of the firearms is pending, which is why it's presented to you today. And then the last budget unit in 234800 probation misgrants, there were 4 final budget changes. First, an increase in intergovernmental revenue on the state side in the amount of $188,343, which is revenue to offset and support final budget changes outlined below. A decrease in salaries and employee benefits in the amount of $6,587 due to reduction of county health insurance rates, an increase in services and supplies in the amount of $13,950, which is programming and incentive expenses for youth, which is no county cost, and an increase of capital assets in the amount of $180,980, which include rollover balances for a vehicle approved in fiscal year 24-25, as well as the outfitting cost for another vehicle approved in fiscal year 24-25. The net revenues for this department as a whole is $13,480,563, with net expenditures of $27,078,862, with a net county cost of $13,598,299. This represents a 10% increase from last year's adopted budget, or a $1,292,014 increase, mainly attributed to the salary and benefit increases adopted in fiscal year 24-25, as well as expenses related to the increased populations in the juvenile facility. At this time, we respectfully request a temporary due pass.
Thank you.
Alex, do you know if this for 22,000 placement requested, did that get taken care of? Or, another way?
Are you referring to in the recommended budget book, sir? Sure. One moment, please, so I can turn to that page.
Do I have that right, sir? I know. Because I was looking at the projects and capital outlay. but one of them was just a small request for 22,000. Yeah. So, do you still need that? That's in a bathroom. Is that where the inmates or staff use that?
Orthotic, or where our juvenile services are, so it's a staff restroom.
So it's hot as hell and cold as hell.
It is.
Madam CAO, we can't find 22,000 to at least replace that. Good job turning down all the other projects. That's what I'm talking about. But it's hot.
It's your board's discretion.
We're, we have that in capital outlay.
So if we were to make an adjustment, then we would just have to rebalance.
Is it easier to do something there? Is it easier to get past today and have your staff sit down and listen?
It's easier to just get past today and then bring a budget adjustment in the future.
I didn't find out why it cost $22,000 to heat and cool bathroom. Yeah, there's something on there.
Does that cover like the electricity projected in that cost? Or that's a good point.
That would just be
AC unit for a whole house is like $8 million.
No. Well, it depends. Well, it goes up every day. So you generally between 10 on the unit, 5-ton units, probably about 8 to 16,000.
Those are just codes we received from Public Works. They got requested that.
I'm gonna go to Costco and then we do. Let's get to Costco. Home Depot.
Okay, we got temporary due pass from Supervisor Neves Robinson. Next item is the Matthew.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Next, we have the fire department's budget and budget units 241000 to 243000, living on page 125 of your recommended book. And this lives in its own independent fund, which is the fire fund of 300120. So again, this is not a general fund department and does not live within the general fund. The fire department offers public safety fire services to all county jurisdictions, and through a few service contracts, they also serve the cities of Avenel and Corcoran, as well as the Santa Rosa Rancheria Tachi-Yokut tribe. Our fire department here in the county also houses the Office of Emergency Services, which serves as the lead agency for the Kings operational area, coordinating and administering many facets of the county's emergency response in various disasters. There are 92 positions in fiscal year 25-26. And in Fire's budget unit 241000, we have some final budget changes. We have an increase in other intergovernmental revenue of $646,310, and this is to account for the updated contract that was before your board and approved with the city of Avenel for fire services. So we're going to be able to realize increased revenue there. We have a decrease in other financing sources of $1,268,628. And this is actually a general fund offset to account for all of the final budget changes within Fire's entire department. And then moving on, we have an increase in salary and employee benefits of $18,145 due to a combination of a decrease in health insurance rates of $161,855 and an increase in overtime of $180,000. And lastly, in this budget unit, we do have an increase in services and supplies of $25,000 to account for some increased training to address a proper chain of command with our staffing. And moving on to the Office of Emergency Management budget unit, which is 243000. We have an increase in intergovernmental revenue on the federal side of $147,000 to account for a Delta flood emergency response grant that was previously before your board. And then we have a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $6,434 to account for the reductions in health insurance rates. And then lastly, an increase in services and supplies of $147,000 to account for the expense side of that Delta flood response grant that was before your board. That leads us to a net revenue of $20,861,504 and a net expenditure of $21,520,533 and an unreimbursed cost to the fire fund. Again, this is this $659,000 is a draw on the fire fund. And that draw there is an 18% decrease from last year's adopted budget, or a decrease of $144,542. And that is primarily attributed to the fact that the $659,000 that you see there that's all that's left within the fire fund. So we're reducing that down to zero and backfilling all other unreimbursed costs with general fund dollars, which is a continuing trend that we've seen over the last few years there. So in this current budget that's before your board, there's $3.27 million in general fund going to offset the unreimbursed cost that the fire fund is not able to pick up. So we're going to continue to work with the fire department on an ongoing basis to address long-term sustainability and, not only in this budget, but in many budgets to come. So with that, respectfully request a temporary due pass.
Thank you. Awesome. Wait a question.
Matthew, does it make sense to, because I know it looks like, shoot, with me not being that educated on it, but just robbing Peter to pay Paul. But when you talk about general fund dollars, you said 659,000. That's general fund dollars, I think.
That's 659,000. That is the unreimbursed cost in the fire fund. So that's what's coming from the fires fund, which is outside. So that 659, if all goes as planned, that will draw the fire fund to zero, for which all of the general fund contributions above and beyond the traditional amounts that we see from Williamson Act and hazardous waste, there's increased contributions to backfill the additional unreimbursed costs that the fire fund can't support itself.
Okay, I guess simply put, I thought I heard you say that fire doesn't have enough money in their budget. Therefore, at the end of the day, we've now recently been taking money out of the county general fund.
Correct.
And if so, what's that amount?
That in fiscal year 25-26, there's $3.27 million in general fund contributions that are built in to get to the net revenue, net expenditure, and unreimbursed cost formula for the fire fund that we have here. So without that,
3.2, that's all new that we're doing that high.
That's in that includes the traditional.
Yeah,
let me get.
Trying to get the number, zoom in on the number that's been extra recently. You consider extra,
right? So I'm going to go to this contribution to other funds notes here for a second. Just give me a few moments if you don't mind. So the addition that you're after is going to be, and I'll get my handy dandy calculator out for some quick math here of, so it's that minus the traditional 500 from hazardous waste and the traditional 516 from Williamson Act. So you're looking at an extra of roughly 2.25 million that we historically don't contribute, but we need to contribute in order to keep their the scope of the services consistent.
I was still talking about 607,000. Because my question was going to be, if we're using general fund money anyways, why can't we just exhaust the total of the or at least explore the possibility of upping more money out of the hazardous waste budget, right, to the fire fund? Because if we're doing 500,000 every year, and that amount hasn't changed since I've been here. Okay, so we do the 500,000, then we do the couple other accounts that we have dedicated to Kettleman, but then we're seeing 600 to 700,000 for capital outlay funds. Want to make more sense just dedicate the rest of that money then to fire and then capital outlay funds. That's being funded through other parts of the budget anyways. And I see you guys are getting tight and telling department heads no on a lot of these requested budgets, but couldn't we help fire be more stable by increasing that amount?
I'll defer that to the CAO.
So I think what the point where you had mentioned earlier, you cut from one end to give to another. So that's essentially what would happen here is there is no revenue for general fund capital outlay projects in capital. Usually it is our hazardous waste attack waste. So if we did remove, the money that's going to capital and put it to fire fund, then we would take from general fund elsewhere to put into capital for other miscellaneous projects.
So the projects vary, but the firefighters are here daily. So I guess that my question would be, and you did answer it, thank you. So would it make sense to dedicate money up front to fire so they know more of where they're at versus us sticking in the well to help out?
It's essentially the same thing. You're pulling it from one revenue to another revenue. So it doesn't really make a difference. It's just the fund where the revenue's coming from.
There's no built-in depreciation in department budgets, for example, like when you're looking at a remodel or a coat of paint or new furniture. There's nothing that gets set aside annually on depreciation, so that pot of money's there, knowing at some point we're going to need another coat of paint versus asking for money.
So we used to set aside about 200,000 for just these miscellaneous things, but it's now down to 50,000. And we use that for roof repairs, something goes out, and we've just kind of been taking it out. If, say, something large hits it, then we take it out of our contingencies. We really don't have a source for capital. We've been gracious enough the last few years to set one-time funds, kind of dropping it into capital, but that's going to go away, and we just don't have an ongoing source. But to answer your question is, no, we don't have something set aside every year. It's just about 50,000 every year, and then whatever we can absorb here and there.
Okay, and then real quick, Mr. Chair, Fire Chief, do you mind coming up? I just want to ask him a quick question for the record, and that was something that can get in our wheel well moving forward. And again, when
how are you?
And again, I know the
6 weeks on a job, you're gonna get grilled.
No, he's not going to do it.
My first budget cycle, let me just tell you that. And I didn't prepare this budget, so.
And again, I asked this, knowing the CAO is doing due diligence and her staff, and they're trying to help. But this is our time here to make us feel a little bit better too. So I know, as the chairman mentioned, you just got here and you're moving forward. So I'm not worried too much right now about some of the things that are in print that got asked for, but then got denied. But that being said, in your short time here, is it your professional analysis that you do need 6 full-time fire apparatus engineers, and that you do need 2 new fire apparatus vehicles? Or is that something you need more time to make this your opinion versus, I don't know if this was the opinion of the previous firefighter.
What I can tell you about the staffing in particular was the methodology of going to industry standard, which would be 3 personnel. And this was a transitional over a multi-fiscal year plan. This is not something necessarily that I've had the time to fully vet out. The apparatus part of it, absolutely, it's something we need to be looking at. We do have SALIS funds that we are still looking at. The fleet is in desperate need of repair, as well as our SCBAs are coming out of alignment this year. We're putting in for a grant for it. We do have a set aside one time on solar money that we can help offset that with. We're looking at partnering with Hanford potentially on doing a joint study so we have interoperability on those. But again, that'll be another $1 million outlay. That's not in here, but that will not impact the budget aspect of it. I am stuck in a conundrum right now with the ongoing negotiations with the fire union related to that. I am holding positions open currently. So as soon as that's resolved, that will help me with my staffing modeling. But right now I can't backfill those positions accordingly until I know what the actual direction is going to be. So that would be my one hanging chat as I look at this moving forward.
Does the current situation, the back and forth that we're going through with the city of Avenal, did that fiscally impact some commitments in the budget as far as maybe adding one more fire truck?
It definitely increased the revenue from what was in recommended to now, but definitely there was already the shortfall, so it's just closed that gap a little bit more.
Well, Chief, with your the new presence here, I know I'd be interested in hearing any new kind of revenue sources or funding sources for your budget, whether it's the county looking at you guys different versus just outside budget. It's looking at you guys as some kind of separate funding, separate and not just being in the whole total in the grand scheme of things. If you have different ideas on that, I'd like to hear about that. See if there's a way we can do it better and see if we can grow that fund.
Absolutely. And two things with that. I have talked to the CAO about getting in front of you all and do an open presentation related to the status of the fire district, or not the fire district, the fire department. I'd like to let you know where we're at, where we potentially could make some changes and adjustments to help conserve some revenue, but also have to have some expenditures to modernize that a little bit. Additionally, when I looked at the contingency aspect of this, it did scare me a lot with zero contingencies for fire, because we're a very dynamic organization. God forbid we actually have to order aircraft. And you can picture that flying by and dropping $100 bills. That's pretty much what that amounts to. And if that's unbudgeted or unaccounted for, that could be a problem. We try never to do that. 2 bulldozers do a lot of work on the flats, but if you had something actually pressing against a city, Avenel in particular, or a north wind coming out, something along those lines, and a dynamic event could put us in a hurt box. So one of the policy things eventually, we do have administrative overhead costs that are available to us through CFA and reimbursement. One thought process is grabbing those and putting those in a contingency moving forward. So we have kind of talked about that in concept, but that'll be a policy level decision moving forward instead of moving it all to operations.
And we are looking to build a new fire headquarters. We've got $3 million in pay from. So that being an expense, but that also radar too.
Correct. Thank you. And by the way, Station 4, as far as that station needing to be rebuilt, is not a problem at this time with HSR. We're able to repave a new driveway around on the backside of that. So that funding could potentially become available on the backside. So, thank you.
Thank you. Question will go on. Alex, all yours. Ag Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The next budget unit and department for your consideration of this boarding is the Ag Commissioner Sealer's Office, which lives in budget unit 260000, located page 132 of your recommended budget book, and this department lives within the general fund. The department is composed of 2 distinct functions, agriculture and measurement standards. On the agriculture side, it provides services to the public utilizing local expertise in the application of laws and regulations to enable sustainability of agriculture and the protection of the environment, as well as the public's health. On the measurement standards side is the local regulatory authority that ensures compliance with state and federal weights and measure standards through administration and enforcement of laws and regulations to ensure that producers, sellers, handlers, and consumers receive true weight, measure, or count of commodities and or services purchased within Kings County. In this department, there are 24 positions for fiscal year 25-26, and there are 2 final budget changes. The first is a decrease in salaries and employee benefits of $34,775, attributed to the reduction of county health insurance rates. And the second is an increase in services supplies in the amount of $125,000 for supplies required to produce bait that supports the department's miscellaneous revenues. The net revenue for this department is $2,212,960. Net expenditures are $3,783,645, with a net county cost of $1,570,685. This represents a 1% increase from last year's adopted budget, or a $10,067 increase, mainly attributed to the increase required for bait protection supplies. At this time, we respectfully request a temporary due pass.
Thank you. Temporary due pass from Robinson and Neves.
This is Community Development Agency, Budget Unit 270000 through 279000. It can be found on page 136 of your recommended budget books, and this budget unit lives within the general fund. The Kings County Community Development Agency works to ensure the well-being of the county's diverse communities by promoting safe, healthy, and sustainable development while preserving its agricultural and community heritage. The agency provides land use planning, building inspections, code compliance, and water agency services for unincorporated areas of Kings County. It also supports local commissions such as the Kings County Planning Commission, Kings County Local Agency Formation Commission, Kings County Water Commission, and advisory agencies such as the Kings County Agricultural Advisory Committee to encourage community participation in county governance. There are 15 positions in the final budget for fiscal year 2025-26, including one unfunded position for the code compliance specialist at the request of the department. Final budget changes include the following. In budget unit 270000 for planning, there is a decrease in salaries and employee benefits of $16,573 due to the decrease in health insurance rates, and a decrease in services and supplies of $20,000 due to the deletion of the general plan and reallocation of funds to the consultant line items. Next page, please. Final budget changes continue to budget unit 279000 building inspection with a decrease in salaries and employee benefits of $109,544 due to the decrease in health insurance rates and unfunding one position, and an increase in services and supplies of $295,822, primarily due to contracting out for the code compliance specialist position and the reallocation of funds from the general plan, and a decrease in capital assets of $55,000 due to unfunding one position. This brings net revenues to $3,122,636, net expenditures at $5,065,183, with a net county cost of $1,942,547. This is an $887,599 increase from last fiscal year's 2024-25 adopted budget, or an 84% increase, mainly attributed to the revenues and expenditures for state water project activities previously accounted for in the Parks and Recreation budget, salary increases, and an increase in consultant allocations. Requesting a temporary due pass. This is Consolidated Courts. It can be found on page 142 in your recommended budget books, and this budget unit lives within the general fund. This budget accounts for the county's mandated support to the courts following their separation from county control under the 1997 trial court funding provisions, as well as funding for the county's defense of the accused contracts. The county contracts with a panel of independent attorneys to provide indigent defense services, also known as public defenders. Public defense services are a local responsibility and are provided through 22 contractors representing indigent individuals in areas of services such as misdemeanor, felony, prison, juvenile delinquency, juvenile dependency, Lanterman Petrus short conservatorships, and post-conviction cases to ensure their constitutional right to counsel. This budget also includes certain defense costs for state prison inmates housed in Kings County, for which the county is reimbursed by the state. There are no final budget changes in this unit, which brings our net revenue to $1,290,200, net expenditures of $4,488,267, with a net county cost of $3,198,067. This is a 16% decrease from last year's adopted budget, or a $615,386 decrease, mainly attributed to the restructuring of the defense of the accused contracts. Requesting a temporary due pass.
By Madam Robinson. Thank you.
Up next before your board, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, is the Child Support Services Department located in Budget Unit 326000, located on page 145 of your recommended budget book. This department does not live within the general fund and instead lives within the Child Support Services Agency Fund, and there are 48 positions for fiscal year 25-26. Child support services play a vital role in supporting families by offering a wide range of essential services. These services include, but are not limited to, locating parents, establishing parentage, obtaining, modifying, and enforcing court orders for child support or medical insurance coverage, and ensuring the timely disbursement of support payments to families. There is only one final budget change before you this morning. It is a decrease in salaries and employee benefits in the amount of $75,003 due to the reduction of county health insurance rates. The net revenues for this department are $5,857,488, with net expenditures of $5,895,927, with an unreimbursed cost of $38,439. This budget unit does not include any general fund contributions and instead, again, is financed by the Child Support Fund. And this represents a 182% decrease from last year's adopted budget, or an $85,353 decrease, mainly attributed to the reduction in intergovernmental revenue from the previous year and the implementation of the Coffin Associates salary increase study. At this time, we respectfully request a temporary due pass.
This is the Civil Grand Jury Budget Unit 328000. The Civil Grand Jury serves to investigate local government operations to ensure the maximum level of service is being provided with no misuse of funds. The Civil Grand Jury has a full complement of 19 jurors. You find this on pages 149 and 150 of your budget book, and it lives in the general fund. There are no FTEs for this budget unit, no final budget changes to report, and zero net revenue. This budget is 100% reliant on the county's general fund. Net expenditures include $135,497 with net county costs of $135,497. This is a 3% decrease from last year's adopted budget, or a $3,693 decrease, requesting a temporary due pass.
For due pass by Matt Robinson. Thank you.
Moving on, we have the Child Advocacy Unit, Budget Unit 336300. We also refer to this as the Minors Advocacy Office there. It can be found on page 151. This does live within the general fund. We have 4.6 positions in fiscal year 25-26. And the attorneys in the Minors Advocacy Office represent minors and non-minors in court, and they advocate for them within the courts, the Human Services Agency, schools, and the probation department. We do have one final budget change. We have a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $10,297 due to the decrease in health insurance rates. That leads us to a net revenue of $540,000, a net expenditure of $857,809, and a net county cost of $317,809 of an impact to the general fund. This is a 117% increase from last year's adopted budget, or an increase of $171,640. And that's primarily attributed to the reduced revenue from the billing that we receive. But that's partially due to the reduction in just the amount of caseload in which we're able to bill for such services. So with that, respectfully request temporary due pass.
Thank you. For due pass by Matt Robinson. Okay.
This is the Public Health Department, Budget Unit 411000 to 416000. The department operates approximately 36 programs across 4 budget units, which include administration and fiscal, environmental health services, women, infants, and children, and public health services. You'll find this on pages 154 to 160 of your budget book. This department also lives in the general fund. Health Administration and Fiscal Division oversees general administration of the department, including planning, staffing, coordination, reporting, and fiscal oversight for all programs, as well as the first 5 program located in Budget Unit 432300. This division also directly oversees the department's contracts and agreements, public health accreditation, and health equity. The Environmental Health Services Division works with the regulated community to prevent, solve, and mitigate environmental health and safety concerns that may pose a health risk to the public. Its primary activities include conducting inspections in the consumer protection programs of retail food safety, public swimming pools, public housing, and local detention facilities. EHS also conducts inspections of body art facilities and medical waste generators such as hospitals, prisons, and specialty clinics throughout the county. EHS serves as the local primacy agency and oversees, it also oversees the local enforcement agency and the certified unified program agency. Next slide, please. Actually, the Women, Infant, and Children Division works with qualified women and infants and children up to age 5 who are at nutritional risk of provide access to nutritious foods by which supplement diet, provide information on health eating, and providing referrals to healthcare services. This federally grant-funded program authorizes a specific amount of funds each year to serve eligible individuals that qualify. Additionally, WIC offers nutrition education and counseling at clinics throughout Kings County, including the main campus in Hanford, and outlying clinics in Avenel, Corcoran, and more. Public Health Services Division encompasses the remaining services under the Department of Public Health, which include Public Health Nursing Division, Clinical Services, Epidemiology and Data Systems, and Public Health Emergency Preparedness Programs. There are a total of 128.6 FTEs for final budget, with a total of 17 positions unfunded, and this was requested by the department to reevaluate programs needs, bringing the total funded positions to 111.6 FTEs. This includes the deletion of 1 senior office assistant, and that's due to it being incorrectly stated in the recommended budget book, and the addition of 1 office assistant level 1-2, and that was also due to it being incorrectly stated in the recommended budget book. And the 17 unfunded vacant positions include the following: 1 county health officer, 1 nutrition assistant, 1 family resource technician, 3 health education specialists, 3 licensed vocational nurses, 1 public health program manager, 1 public health emergency planner, 4 public health nurses, and 2 registered nurses. Final budget changes for health administration include an increase in intergovernmental revenue in the amount of $61,949, and this is due to the use of health realignment funds. A decrease in miscellaneous revenues of $26,227 due to no longer having a clinic in Avenel. A decrease in salary and employee benefits of $28,614, mainly attributed to the reduction in health insurance rates. And an increase in service and supplies of $15,122 due to the redistribution of operating expenses between all health programs. An increase in other charges, $11,361 due to the redistribution of operating expenses between all health programs, and a decrease in intrafund transfers in the amount of $37,853 due to the redistribution of operating expenses between all health programs. Next budget unit, environmental health. Decrease in intergovernmental revenue of $15,170, and this is attributed to the overall reduction of revenue needed from health realignment funds due to the reduction in expenditures. This includes an increase in miscellaneous revenue of $50,000. These are rollover funds from the farm and ranch pass-through funding. A decrease in salary employee benefits of $8,302. This is due to a reduction to the health insurance rates. An increase in service and supplies of $47,614. These are rollover expenditures from the farm and ranch pass-through funding, and a decrease in other charges of $4,482, and this is a decrease in personnel in programs. Next is the WIC nutrition program. A decrease in intergovernmental revenue of $3,574, and this is due to the reduction of health realignment funds. A decrease in salary employee benefits of $9,371, and this is due to the reduction to health insurance rates. A decrease in service and supplies of $18, and this is due to county ISF reductions in rents, leases, SING, and utilities. An increase in other charges of $5,815 due to personnel administrative allocation. Next budget unit is public health services. Increase in intergovernmental revenue of $310,862, and this is due to no longer receiving COVID-19 grant funding. Decrease in other financing sources of $2,755,055, and this is due to no longer receiving COVID-19 grant funding. Decrease in salary employee benefits of $94,926 due to a reduction to health insurance rates, and a decrease in service and supplies of $2,346,070. This is also due to no longer receiving COVID-19 grant funding. Decrease in other charges of $3,848 due to the redistribution of operating expenses between all health programs, and an increase in other financing uses of $652. This is attributed to the increase in personnel cost applied. Bringing net revenue to $18,017,129, with net expenditures of $18,678,455, bringing net county cost to $661,326. This remains unchanged from last year's adopted budget, as this is the county's maintenance of effort for public health services, budget unit 416000, requesting a temporary DPAS.
All right, next up, we have the Behavioral Health Department. That's going to be budget unit 420000 and 422500. It can be found on page 161 of your recommended budget books. This does live within the general fund. There are 69 positions in fiscal year 25-26. It does include the, and here's a couple of changes from what was presented to your board and recommended. Some of these positions were not caught, but these were positions that were changed and already board approved when Human Resources took the various resolution updates and bargaining updates and position changes before your board. So these are capturing and incorporating those. So we have the addition of 1 FTE patients' rights advocate, the deletion of 1 FTE care coordinator. So that was a reclass there. We're adding 1 medical office receptionist and deleting 1 office assistant. So again, those were positions and classifications that were already approved by your board via human resources, and just things we're cleaning up from what was printed in the recommended budget book. Moving on, we have a few transfers here, and this is transferring existing staff within existing budget units within the department. So we're transferring one business application specialist from their substance use disorder budget unit to their administration budget unit. They're transferring one position coordinator from their administration budget unit to their Mental Health Services Act budget unit, and then transferring one recovery support coordinator one from their Mental Health Services Act budget unit to their administration budget unit. And lastly, they're transferring a recovery support coordinator two from their admin budget unit to their mental health services budget unit. So with that, we do have some final budget changes in the mental health budget unit, which is 420000. There's a decrease in intergovernmental revenue state of $32,404 to account for all final budget changes. And then we have a decrease in other charges of $32,404. And this is due to final budget changes that occurred in their administration budget unit, which is 422500, that they cost apply all of those expenses to all of their other budget units within this department. So this was one of the budget units affected accordingly. Moving on to their mental health administration services budget unit, which is 420100. There's a decrease in intergovernmental revenue state of $1,350. Again, this is revenue offset for all final budget changes in the form of 1991 realignment. And then we have a decrease in other charges of $1,350. Again, this is due to final budget changes in their administrative budget unit that get cost applied and accounted for in this particular budget unit. Moving on to their substance use disorder budget unit, which is 422100. There's a decrease in intergovernmental revenue state of $23,065. And this is the 2011 realignment revenue offset for all final budget changes that occur within the administration, within the administration budget unit that are getting cost applied here, in addition to actual final budget changes that are occurring directly within this budget unit here. With that, we have a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $14,289 to account for the reductions in health insurance rates. And then we have a decrease in other charges of $8,776. And this is the reduction due to the administrative allocation impacts of the final budget changes that are occurring within their administration budget unit, which again is 422500. Moving on to their Mental Health Services Act budget unit, which is 422200. There's a decrease in intergovernmental state revenue of $68,397. And this is the Mental Health Services Act revenue offset for all final budget changes that are recurring as a result of final budget changes in their administration budget unit that get cost applied here, in addition to the final budget changes that directly are impacted in this budget unit accordingly. With that, we have a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $44,769 to account for the reduction in health insurance rates, and a decrease in other charges of $23,628. And again, this is due to the decrease in the administration allocations that were caused by the final budget changes on their administration budget unit that are cost applied to this particular budget unit. Moving on to their grants budget unit, which is 422400. There's a decrease in miscellaneous revenue of $1,350 to account for the grant revenue offset for all final budget changes, and then a decrease in other charges of the same amount to account for the final budget changes that occurred in their administration budget unit that are getting cost applied here. Moving on to their last budget unit, which is administration, 422500. There's a decrease in salary and employee benefits of $67,507 and an equal decrease in other charges of $67,507. And again, that's because all expenses in this budget unit are cost applied throughout all of their budget units across the entire department. So that leaves us with net revenue of $64,367,502 and net expenditures of $64,402,053, resulting in a net county cost to the general fund of $34,551. And this remains unchanged from last fiscal year, as this is our standard maintenance of effort in order for us to receive our 1991 realignment revenue. So with that, respectfully request a temporary due pass.
Due pass from Supervisor Nance. Robinson? Okay, hang on a second. Everybody doing okay? Anything regret from that? I think 5 minutes. You guys good? Go till noon and then take a break. We'll give them try at noon. So, Monica, yep, all yours.
We have about 5 more departments and about
Okay, this
54
is,
slides.
Okay, as long as you ain't got to go to the bathroom. Okay, Veronica, it's all yours.
all righty, this is first 5 budget unit 432300. This lives in Fund 300190 on pages 167 through 171 of your recommended budget book. First 5 is a separate fund that lives under public health. First 5 receives and administers Proposition 10 funding. Funds are utilized to promote, support, and improve the early development of children from the prenatal state to 5 years of age. First 5 collaborates with local agencies to implement and integrate a system of information and services. There are 2 FTEs for final budget. Final budget changes include an increase in miscellaneous revenues of $28,797 due to the need of first 5 trust fund trust revenue to offset final budget adjustments. An increase in other financing sources of $652 due to the cost applying personnel time to public health programs. An increase in salary and employee benefits of $30,806 due to the final budget adjustments made to correct salary of a program manager position. An increase in service and supplies in the amount of $157,213 due to the overall increase in the Children and Youth Behavioral Health Initiative, CYBHI grant. A decrease in other charges of $26,447, and this is due to a decrease in IT rates and health administrative allocation charges. A decrease in other financing uses of $132,123. This is due to position changes resulting in personnel not cost applying time to First 5 program. This brings net revenue to $2,542,737 with a net expenditure of the same of $2,542,737 with a 0 unreimbursed cost. This remains unchanged from last year's adopted budget as First 5 is fully funded with Proposition 10 and state health funding, requesting a temporary due pass.
Thank you. Temporary due pass from Nevs and Robinson. Michael, it's all yours.
This is the Health and Human Services Department budget unit 510000 through 520000, page 172 of the recommended budget book, which stays in the general fund. Human Services houses 3 budget units with varying responsibilities. First, there is an administrative function split into 3 divisions. Administration provides a broad range of services across the whole agency. Benefit and Employee Services Division responsible for determining, issuing, and maintaining benefits for CalWORKs, foster care, adoption, and other mandated programs. And the Social Service Division comprised of child welfare services, adult protective services, and in-home supportive services. Responsibility for the funding, the county in-home supportive services. I'm sorry, I'll start this again. Responsibility for the funding, the county in-home supportive services. Public authority is also housed in this department, which provides funding to the in-home supportive services providers in the county. Lastly, the department unit includes categorical aid, which offers mandated benefit payment to legal clients in various assistance programs such as foster care, adoption, CalWORKs, cash assistance, general relief, and others. There are 484 FTE in the final budget for the fiscal year 25-26. There is a deletion of 2 FTE, Child Welfare Program Manager, as a result of the Coffin Associate study, and a deletion of 2 FTE Social Service Supervisor CPS, offset the adds above. Next slide, please. Final budget changes for Unit 510000 Human Service Agency Admin include increase in the intergovernmental revenue stayed by $384,903 due to state share revenue offset for housing supporting program, bringing families home program, and home safe programs. A decrease in intergovernmental revenue federal by $385,645 and a decrease in salary and employee benefit by $642,742 and the decrease in the two categories due to the health insurance rate decrease. Increase in the other charges by $642,000. Again, that's due to the state share revenue offset for housing support program, bringing families home program, and the home safe programs. The net revenue for the department is $133,724,880. Net expenditures is $137,750,585, which leads to a net county cost of $4,026,705. That represents 13% increase from last year adopted budget or $476,172. Mainly due to a 50-50% cost sharing requirement between the federal and local programs. Out of the net county costs, there is $253,597 due to Kings County Commission and Aging Adult Care Program, General Relief, and contributions to Kings Larry Area Agency Aging. And $3,773,108 due to certain programs of general fund mandated for entitlement programs plus covering the shortfall between program expenses and state federal revenue covering those entitlement programs. Request a temporary do pass.
Thank you, Michael. Supervisor Nabs, Supervisor Robinson, thank you very much. Alec, all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The next department for your board's consideration this morning is the Job Training Office, which includes budget units 574-300 through 594-400 and is located on page 179 of your recommended budget book. This department is not within the general fund and instead has two funds, WIOA, which is an acronym for the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, JTO Fund, as well as the WIOA Subcontractors Fund. The Kings County Job Training Office provides employment, training, and economic development activities in the municipalities and unincorporated areas of Kings County. There are 24 positions in fiscal year 25-26, and this includes the addition of one FTE employment and training supervisor, the deletion of one FTE JTO program manager, the deletion of 3 FTE employment and training technicians 1-2s, as well as the deletion of 2 FTE senior employment and training technicians. As my colleague Giselle shared earlier in the presentation, this was a department-led add and delete with a net of 5. There are truly one final budget change, but because of the relationship between revenues and expenditures within this federal grant program, it is represented across different parts of the budget. And that is due to the reduction of county health insurance rates, and is as follows. In 574-300 JTO subcontractors is an increase in services supplies of $41,602. That essentially acts as a revenue offset due to the reduction of county health insurance rates, allowing JTO to serve more clients, allowing them more money to spend on client services. We also saw this as a decrease in other charges in that same account line. And in 594-100 JTO County Administration, we saw it as a decrease in salaries and employee benefits, as well as a decrease in inter-fund transfers. The net revenues for this department are $3,662,389, with the same net expenditures, with an unreimbursed cost of $0. These budget units do not include any contributions from the county general fund and is primarily financed through the federal grant funding. This represents a 7% decrease from last year's adopted budget, or $282,990 decrease, attributed to the amount of federal WIOA funding received. At this time, we respectfully request a temporary do pass.
Thank you. Supervisor Nabs, Supervisor Robinson. So.
This is the library budget, 620000. It can be found on page 183 in your recommended budget books and lives within its own library fund, 300100. The library provides books, information, and other resources to meet the educational and recreational needs of the public. The department has 6 branch libraries throughout the county and a partnership with the Armona Unified Elementary School District to provide services at the Armona Community Library. There are 17.51 positions in the final budget for fiscal year 2025-26, and final budget changes include the following: a decrease in salaries and employee benefits of $17,500 due to the decrease in health insurance rates, and an increase to services and supplies of $188,785 to cover costs associated to the Hanford and Lemoore Library renovations. This brings us to a net revenue of $3,318,600, net expenditures of $2,936,416, and an unreimbursed cost of $382,184. This is a 27% decrease from last year's adopted budget, or a $138,483 decrease, mainly attributed to the increases in projected revenues and decrease in health insurance rates. Requesting a temporary due pass.
Thank you. Supervisor Nance, Supervisor Robinson, thank you. Michael, it's all yours.
This is Ag Extension Services, known as UC Cooperative Extension, Budget Unit 630000, page 188 of the recommended budget book, stays in the general fund. They are a county-based research and educational program of the University of California, Division of Agriculture and Natural Resources, and our cooperating relationship between the county, the University of California, and the United States Department of Agriculture. The department provides local farmers with critical research and resources, and also manages and administers the County 4-H program for the county youth. There are 2 FTE in the final budget, and there are no final budget changes for the fiscal year 25-26. Net revenue is $0. Net expenditure is $323,718. Net county cost is the same amount, $323,718, fully funded by general fund contribution. That represents 11% increase from last year adopted budget, or $32,970 increase, mainly attributed to 61% increase in the other charges category due to the IT service rate increase. Request a temporary due pass.
Supervisor Nance, Robinson, thank you. You good? Everybody?
The following 6 budget units are for public facility fees. The county collects public facility fees under the authority granted by the Mitigation Fee Act contained in the California Government Code Section 66000. Revenue from public facility fees must be spent on new facilities or expansion of current facilities to serve new development. The first public facility fee is public protection, which is budget unit 187301, fund 200021, and is on page 193 of the budget book. This budget includes all construction projects related to public protection facility fees funded by impact fees. Budget changes include an increase of use of money and property of $4,318, and this is due to actuals of revenue received in the month of June 2025, and an increase in charges for services of $192,614, and this is also due to actual revenue received in June 2025. Bringing net revenue to $634,757 with net expenditures of $0 and an unreimbursed cost of $634,757. There is no negative impact on the unreimbursed cost, but a positive impact of $634,757. Requesting a temporary due pass.
Thank you. Temporary due pass by Supervisor Nance, Supervisor Robinson.
This is public facility fee for fire, which is budget unit 187302, fund 200022 on page 195 of the recommended budget book. This budget unit includes the revenue of all construction projects related to fire department facilities funded by impact fees. Final budget changes include an increase in money and property of $2,928, and this is due to actuals and revenue received in the month of June 2025. A decrease in charges for services of $34,591. This is also due to actuals in revenue received as of June 2025, bringing net revenue to $111,502, and net expenditures to $0, an unreimbursed cost of $111,502. And this is not a negative impact to the unreimbursed cost, but a positive of $111,502. Requesting a temporary due pass.
Supervisor Nance, Supervisor Robinson, thank you.
This is public facility fees for county libraries, budget unit 1873003, fund 200023 on pages 197 of your budget book. The budget includes revenue received for all construction projects related to library facilities funded by impact fees. Branch libraries are located throughout Kings County with locations in Hanford, Armona, Avenel, Corcoran, Kettleman City, Lemoore, and Stratford. Final budget changes include an increase in use of money and property of $4,211. This is due to actuals in revenue received as of June 2025, and an increase in charges for services of $31,629 is also due to actuals in revenue received as of June 2025, bringing net revenue to $332,276, net expenditures at zero, and an unreimbursed cost of $332,276. This is also not a negative impact to unreimbursed costs, but a positive of $332,276, requesting a temporary due pass.
Supervisor Nance, Supervisor Robinson.
This is public facility fee for Sheriff Patrol and Investigation, which is budget unit 187304, lives in fund 200024 on page 199 of the recommended budget book. This budget unit includes the revenue of all construction projects and vehicles related to the Sheriff Patrol and Investigation funded by impact fees. Final budget changes include an increase in money and property of $255. This is due to actuals and revenue received as of the month of June 2025, and a decrease in charges for services of $2,298, and this is also due to actuals and revenue received as of June 2025, bringing net revenue to $11,870 with zero net expenditures and an unreimbursed cost of $11,870. There is no impact on unreimbursed costs, but a positive impact of $11,870, requesting a temporary due pass.
Supervisor Nance, Supervisor Robinson, thank you.
This is public facility fee for animal services, which is budget unit 187305, fund 200025 on page 201 of the budget book. This budget unit includes the revenue of all construction projects related to animal control facilities funded by impact fees. There are no final budget changes. Net revenue is $915, with net expenditures at zero and an unreimbursed cost of $915. This is also not a negative impact on unreimbursed cost, but a positive of $915, requesting a temporary due pass.
Supervisor Robinson, thank you.
This last fee here is the public facilities fee for administration, which is budget unit 187306, fund 200026 on page 203 of the budget book. This budget unit provides administration costs to activities related to impact fees such as capital improvement plan and nexus study. There are no final budget changes to report. Net revenue is $1,298 with net expenditures at $15,000 and an unreimbursed cost of $13,702. And this is due to the costs associated with the 5-year impact fee report, the capital improvement plan, requesting a temporary due pass.
Thank you. Michael, it's all yours.
This is building projects, aka capital projects, budget unit 700000, page 205 of the recommended budget book, and which stays in the accumulated capital accumulative capital outlay fund. The capital project fund was established to account and administer major capital expenditure, planning, designing, constructing, improving, and procuring of legal reserved or designated funds related to the construction or manufacturing of county-owned infrastructures and equipment. The administration of county-wide planning and implementation of capital project is intended to serve the need of the community to enable work, education, health monitoring, and safety. Final budget changes include the increase in the miscellaneous revenue by $817,742 due to the Kettleman City Bridge revenue was deferred to fiscal year 25-26 of the amount of the budget $7.61 million. $174,720 in public health contribution for building 3 repair. Increase in other financing sources by $1,452,073 due to revenue being deferred to fiscal year 25-26 for the following project: Fire Station 4 and 5, $3.54 million; Kettleman City curbside curb gutter sidewalk by 1.5 million, and adding the new project for the sheriff car wash project for $425,000. Increasing the services and supplies by $2,605,821 due to expenses being deferred to 25-26 for the following projects: Government Center Courthouse, $3.08 million, Avenel Courthouse, $425,000, and the Public Health Building 3 design, $174,720. Increasing capital assets by $1,975,548 due to additional $425,000 for the sheriff car wash project and the deferred of expenses for other projects to fiscal year 25-26. Net revenue for that unit is $14,267,942. Net expenditures $18,994,695, which leads to unreimbursed cost of $4,726,754. That represents 492% increase from last year adopted budget, or $5,930,634 increase, mainly due to increase in a general fund contribution to the evidence storage facility and the space planning and design for the Government Center Camps Courthouse and the Avenel Courthouse. The next slide will illustrate the project built into this budget. Next slide, please. This slide includes all projects, their budget, and the funding source. I'll start reading from the top. Main hall inspection switch, $88,797. Repair replacement roof, $25,000. Facility improvement, $25,000. Evidence storage facility, $1,134,744. Fire station 4 and 5, $3,540,997. Kettleman City Bridge, $7,619,675. Kettleman City Curb Gutter Side, $1.5 million. Success Dam Enlargement, $18,578. CDA Divider, $25,582. Juvenile Center Fire Panel Upgrade, $700,000. Space planning and design for the two projects: Government Center Camps Courthouse, $3,186,601, and the Avenel Courthouse for $430,000. And Chase Roads Public Health Building 3 design, $174,720. Ramona Community Service District Streetlight Project, $100,000. A Sheriff Car Wash Project, $425,000. The total expended added up for all the projects, $18,994,694. Request a temporary due pass.
Temporary due pass by Supervisor Knapp. Robinson, thank you.
This is the Kings County Juvenile Center Remodel and Expansion Project under SB 81, Budget Unit 70003 on page 209 of the budget book. This is an accumulative capital outlay fund 20000. This budget unit reflects the funding provided by the State of California State Public Works Board. The Juvenile Center was completed late fall of last year, and staff is working on finalizing the final payment from the state. The final budget changes include an increase in revenue of $3,936,000 due to revenue not received in the prior fiscal year, bringing net revenue to $3,936,000 and net expenditures of $0, an unreimbursed cost of $3,936,000. This is a positive unreimbursed cost to the capital outlay fund balance, requesting a temporary due pass.
Thank you. Temporary due pass by the Knapp.
This is a Hanford Library Project, Budget Unit 700004. This is a new budget unit that was created just to house that project and allow either tracking of the project activities. That is in page 211 of the recommended budget book and stays in that accumulated capital outlay fund. This budget unit reflects the funding support provided by the State of California's State Library to the county's Hanford Library Infrastructure and Remodel Project. Kings County was awarded $6.6 million in Building Forward grant funds for the project on October 19 of 2022. The county is currently in the design phase. Final budget changes, including decrease in the intergovernmental fund revenue state by $37,826 due to the work activity being completed and revenue recognized during fiscal year 24-25. A decrease in capital asset by $37,826 due to the activity being completed and the expenses incurred during the fiscal year 24-25. Net revenue is $5,957,415. Net expenditures, $9,957,415. Unreimbursed cost is $0. Requested temporary due pass.
Thank you.
This is a Lemoore Library project, budget unit 700005. This is also a new budget unit created for better tracking. Page number 214 of the recommended budget, accumulative capital outlay fund. This budget unit reflects the funding support provided by the State of California State Library to the county's Lemoore Library Infrastructure and Remodel Project. Kings County was awarded $7,019,852 in Building Forward grant fund for the project on October 19 of 2022. Also, the county is in the currently in the design phase. Final budget changes including increase in the intergovernmental revenue state by $293,309 due to revenue being deferred to fiscal year 25-26, and increase in capital outlay by $293,309 due to expenses being deferred to fiscal year 25-26. Net revenue is $6,844,796. Net expenditures $6,844,796, which leads to unreimbursed cost of $0. Requested temporary due pass.
This is construction debt, budget unit 900300. It can be found on page 217 in your recommended budget books, and this budget unit lives in the general fund. This budget unit isolates annual debt repayment costs for accounting purposes regarding approved projects. The construction debt budget tracks the revenues and expenditures, which includes debts on the 2008 Chevron Energy project and the 2011 Covered Parking Solar project. Revenue is generated by charging the department through their cost applied energy project account for the cost of making this annual payment. The 2008 Chevron Energy project is scheduled to be paid off in July of 2028. And the 2011 Covered Parking Solar project is scheduled to be paid off in July of 2027. There are no final budget changes, bringing our net revenue to $1,152,455, with net expenditures matching at $1,152,455, the net county cost of $0, requesting a temporary due pass. This is the 2014 AB 900 jail bonds, budget unit 900400, page 219 in your recommended budget books, and this budget unit lives within its own fund in 400010. This budget unit reflects the required match payment for the Assembly Bill 900 Phase 2 jail expansion project. This budget tracks revenues and expenditures. Revenue is generated from the AB 1265 Williamson Act and farmland security zone payments. This bond is scheduled to be paid off in June of 2029. There are no final budget changes, with net revenues at $477,250, net expenditures matching at $477,250, and a net county cost of $0. This remains unchanged from last year's adopted budget, requesting a temporary due pass. This is 2005 jail bond refunding, budget unit 900500, page 221 in your recommended budget books, and lives within its own fund in 400020. This budget unit reflects the required jail construction lease revenue bond debt service payments refunding. The jail bond refunding budget tracks the revenues and expenditures. Criminal justice fees collected by the courts were anticipated to solely fund the expenditure. However, general fund contributions have been required since fiscal year 2023-24 due to decreasing fee collections by the courts. In fiscal year 2014-2015, these bonds were refinanced at a lower rate and budgeted to this new budget unit. This debt is scheduled to be paid off in June of 2028. There are no final budget changes, with net revenues at $978,991, net expenditures at $678,791, and a net county cost of $300,200. Requesting a temporary due pass.
Temporary due pass, Supervisor Neves, Supervisor Robinson. Thank you.
This is the HSA modular building debt, page 223 in your recommended budget books, and lives within its own fund 400030. This budget reflects the interest payments on the new Human Services Agency modular building. The HSA modular building budget tracks the revenues and expenditures, which is provided by HSA. The debt is scheduled to be paid off in fiscal year 2027-2028. There are no final budget changes, bringing our net revenues to $546,950, with net expenditures matching at $546,950 and a net county cost of $0. Requesting a temporary due pass.
Temporary due pass, Supervisor Neves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Veronica.
Hello again.
Next.
The following 9 slides are the county's contingency funds. Contingencies for general budget unit 99000 lives in the general fund and is on page 225 of the budget book. This budget unit provides funds for anticipated needs or emergencies during the year and is the primary source of funding for our fund balance leading into fiscal year 26-27. Said differently, if the budget goes exactly as planned, this contingency will be our starting fund balance in fiscal year 26-27. Final budget changes include an increase in appropriation for contingencies in the amount of $255,483 due to final budget adjustments, with net revenue at $0, net expenditures at $10,914,438, with an unreimbursed cost of $10,914,438. Requesting a temporary due pass.
Temporary due pass by Supervisor Neves. Robinson. Thank you.
This is contingencies for library, which is budget unit 990200. This budget unit provides funds for library's unanticipated needs or emergency during the year. It's on page 227 of the budget book. Library fund lives in 300100. Final budget changes include an increase in appropriation for contingencies in the amount of $442,255 due to final budget adjustments, with $0 net revenue and net expenditure at $9,185,585 and an unreimbursed cost of $9,185,585. Requesting a temporary due pass.
Temporary due pass by Supervisor Neves. Supervisor Robinson. Thank you.
Quick question. Don't they have the largest reserve fund county budget?
I think they have the largest reserve fund in the county budget.
That increase comes from the general fund?
I'm not sure if they have the largest revenue. One of our Excel document that we have online could show that number. Deputy CAO?
Appropriation comes
Mhm.
from. Don't they have like $7 million reserve there in that district? Okay, so the appropriation comes from that.
Yes. Yes. Oh, okay. You're welcome. Next is the contingencies for road budget unit 990300, fund 300110 on page 229 of the budget book. This budget unit provides funds to roads and anticipated needs or emergencies during the year. Final budget changes include an increase in appropriation for contingencies in the amount of $2,965,871, and this is due to final budget adjustments, with $0 net revenue and net expenditures at $9,692,126, an unreimbursed cost of $9,692,126. Requesting a temporary due pass.
Temporary due pass by Supervisor Neves. Supervisor Robinson.
This is contingencies for fire, which is budget unit 990400, fund 300120 on page 231 of the budget book. This budget unit provides funds for fire's unanticipated needs or emergencies during the year. No final budget changes to report. There's $0 net revenue and $0 net expenditures and $0 unreimbursed cost. Requesting a temporary due pass.
Temporary due pass by Supervisor Neves and Robinson. Thank you.
This is contingencies for fish and game budget unit 990500, fund 300130 on page 233 of the budget book. This budget unit provides funds for the county's fish and game unanticipated needs or emergencies during the year. Final budget changes include an increase to appropriation for contingencies in the amount of $5,050, and this is due to final budget adjustments, with zero net revenue and net expenditures at $22,535 and an unreimbursed cost of $22,535, requesting a temporary due pass.
Temporary due pass by Supervisor Nance.
This is contingencies for a cumulative capital outlay, which is budget unit 990600 in Fund 200000 on page 238. This budget unit provides funds for cumulative capital outlays, unanticipated needs, or emergencies during the year. The final budget changes include a decrease in appropriation for contingencies in the amount of $2,354,153 due to final budget adjustments. Net revenue is zero. Net expenditures are $5,521,901 and unreimbursed cost of $5,521,901, requesting a temporary due pass.
Temporary due pass, Supervisor Nance.
This is contingencies for law library, which is budget unit 991000, Fund 600130 on page 237. This budget unit provides funds for the law library's unanticipated needs or emergencies during the year. Final budget changes include a decrease to appropriation for contingencies in the amount of $7,569 due to final adjustments made, bringing net revenue to zero and net expenditures to $93,108 and unreimbursed cost of $93,108, requesting a temporary due pass.
Due pass, Supervisor Nance. Supervisor Robinson. Thank you.
This is contingencies for First Five, which is budget unit 991100, Fund 300190. On page 239 of your budget book, this budget unit provides funds for First Five's unanticipated needs or emergencies during the year. Final budget changes include a decrease in appropriation for contingencies in the amount of $4,288 due to final budget adjustments, with net revenue at zero, net expenditures at $1,345,358, and an unreimbursed cost of $1,345,358, requesting a temporary due pass.
Pass, Supervisor Nance. Robinson. Thank you.
And the last set of contingencies for child support, which is budget unit 991600, Fund 300180 on page 241. This budget unit provides funds for the child support's unanticipated needs or emergencies throughout the year. Final budget changes include a decrease in appropriation for contingencies in the amount of $429,818 due to final budget adjustments, bringing net revenue to zero, net expenditures to $447,563, and an unreimbursed cost of $447,563, requesting a temporary due pass.
Due pass by Supervisor Nance. Supervisor Robinson. Thank you. Hey, Michael, it's all yours.
This is information technology, aka IT, budget unit 195000 through 195900, page 243 of the recommended budget book. Information, which stays in the information technology internal service fund. IT provide information technology, purchasing, mail, print, and records management services to the county, to all the county departments, several police departments, and several special districts with Kings County. The IT department is funded through internal service fund, which means its revenue is generated by charging other county departments for the services it provides. There are 35 FTE in the final budget for the fiscal year 25-26. There is an addition of 2 information technology analysts, 3, and addition of 2 senior information technology analysts. This reflects the board adopted action based on the Coffin Associate recommendation. Final budget changes include for the unit 195000, Office Information Technology Services includes decrease in salaries and employee benefits by $39,907 due to the health insurance rate decrease, increase in service and supplies by $59,817 due to a combination of activities, including state-required membership for multi-state information sharing and analysis center, pure controller upgrade, BC lease payments, and Beyond Trust. Increase in capital assets by $803,896 due to the uninterrupted power supply, which known as UPS, and the purchases. Unit number 195700 purchasing includes decrease in in salaries and employee benefits by $4,305 due to health insurance rate decrease. Next slide, please. Final budget changes for Unit 195400 Central Services, including decrease in salaries and employee benefits by $3,358 due to the health insurance rate decrease. For the Unit 195900 Information Technology Admin, including a decrease in salaries and employee benefits by $6,451, primarily due to the health insurance rate decrease. Net revenue for the department is $9,049,929. Net expenditures is $9,935,020. Unreimbursed cost is $885,091. The unreimbursed cost of $689,613 a draw on IT's ISF, which represent 28% increase from last year adopted budget, or $195,478 increase. An increase is primarily due to the purchasing for the uninterrupted power supply and firewall purchases. Request a temporary do pass.
Thank you. Temporary do pass by Supervisor Nance. Supervisor Robinson, thank you.
This is the liability self-insurance internal service fund, page 247 of the recommended budget book. Liability which stays in the liability self-insurance fund 100013. This budget accounts for the payment of the insurance premium, legal, investigative, and claim expenses related to the county self-insurance program. Final budget changes including decrease in other financing sources by $44,250 due to the adjustment to the revenue transfer in to align with the revised expenses allocations, ensuring it matches the general fund transfer out, as this should be a balanced budget. A decrease in services and supplies by $1,044,250 due to a decrease in general liability insurance premiums. An increase in other charges by $1 million due to an increase in liability claims. Net revenue is $6,230,155. Net expenditures $6,230,155. This is an 80% increase in the total expenditures from last year adopted budget, fiscal year 24-25, or $2.7 million increase. And that's mainly due to the increase in the general liability insurance premium and the liability claims. The unreimbursed cost is $0, which stays the same from last year adopted budget 24-25. Request a temporary do pass.
Temporary do pass by Supervisor Nance. Thank you.
This is the liability self-insurance internal service fund, page 249 of the recommended budget book, which stays under the health self-insurance fund 500020. This budget accounts for the county medical, dental, and vision coverage for program for active, retired, and corporate eligible employees. No final budget changes. Net revenue for this department is $23,755,293. Net expenditures $18,770,811, which leads to unreimbursed cost of $4,984,482. The unreimbursed cost actually is a net in 25-26 is actually a net positive contribution to the health insurance fund, which meaning there will be increase in the health insurance fund by the end of the fiscal year by $4,984,482. This contribution to the health insurance fund is $2,738,503, or 121% increase from fiscal year 24-25. Request a temporary do pass.
Do pass by Supervisor Nance. Thank you.
This is the Kings County Employee Health Center, budget unit 868500, page 251 of the recommended budget, which stays in the health self-insurance fund 500020. The Kings County Employee Health Center is an on-site health facility offers to the employee who are in the Kings County Health Plan, their spouse, and the dependents, as well as retiree and COPRA participants. No final budget changes. Net revenue is $0. Net expenditures is $863,374. Unreimbursed cost of $863,374. This budget is fully paid with fund balance of the health self-insurance fund. This represents 2% increase from last year adopted budget, or $18,162 from fiscal year 24-25. Request a temporary due pass, please.
Temporary due pass, but thank you.
This is the workers' compensation budget unit 869000, page 253 of their recommended budget book, which stays in the workers' compensation self-insurance internal service fund, fund number 500010. This budget accounts for the benefit paid for the county employee who get injured on the job. Final budget changes, including a decrease in other services supplies by $58,645 due to a decrease in workers' compensation insurance premiums. Net revenue is $150,000. Net expenditures $518,037. The unreimbursed cost of $368,037. This is a draw on the workers' compensation self-insurance, which represents 74% decrease from last year adopted budget, or $1,056,905, primarily due to the additional $1.3 million is in cost allocation across all departments. Request a temporary due pass.
Supervisor Neves, Robinson, thank you very much. Hey, Michael, bring it home.
Yeah, almost one more department to go. This is the road, fish and game, parks and recreation budget within the public works. Page number 255 of the recommended budget book, which stays in the road fund 300110, fish and game fund 300130, and the general fund. The road division maintains county roads, bridges, crossings, and culverts, while parks and recreation maintains and improve county parks and the grounds of the county-owned facilities. The department is funded through the Internal Service Fund. There are 22 FTE in the final budget for the fiscal year 25-26. Final budget changes, including for roads 310000, including decrease in other financing sources by $71,728 due to the maintenance of effort, which known as MOE match is required that was secured during fiscal year 24-25. A decrease in salaries and employee benefits by $18,695 due to the health insurance rate decrease. A decrease in capital assets by $429,000 due to delay in purchasing to the tractor and grader. Next slide, please. Net revenue $12,906,023. Net expenditures $21,761,386. Unreimbursed cost of $1,463,559. For general fund for parks and recreation, which represent a 11% increase from last year adopted budget, or $142,1819, mainly attribute to increase driven by wages and benefits adjustment, higher parks utility costs, and Kingstone Parks beautification expenses. The unreimbursed cost of $7,391,804 for road fund. This represents 14% increase from last year adopted budget, or $925,589 increase, mainly attribute to the continued work on the various projects, including the Avenue cut-off work, road work improvement project, the 16th Avenue project, the 17th was Houston traffic signal, and the roundabout at Greenville. Request a temporary due pass.
Temporary due pass by Supervisor Neves and Supervisor Valley.
This is the Public Works Internal Service Fund budget unit 925300 through 926500, page 256 in their recommended budget book, which stays in the Public Works Internal Service Fund 500300. This budget houses the parks and grounds responsible for the maintenance and improvements of Highkey Park, Purist Park, and Kingstone Park, and all the county-owned grounds, building maintenance responsible for maintaining all the county-owned buildings, the surveyor responsible for various engineering records and county permits, and the Public Works Administration. It contains 60 FTE in the final budget for the fiscal year 25-26. Final budget changes for parks and grounds. Budget unit 925300 includes increase in charges for services by $29,070. This budget is fully funded with fees from the parks, and decrease in salaries and employee benefits by $17,505 due to the health insurance decrease. Increase in services and supplies by $28,500 to anticipate for utility increase. Increase in other charges by $1,282 for public works admin cost applied to parks budget. Next slide, please. Final budget changes also for building and maintenance. Unit number 925700 include decrease in charges for services by $42,015. This budget is fully funded by charging out for services rendered. A decrease in salaries and employee benefits by $42,015 due to the health insurance rate decrease. Final budget changes for the unit number 926100 severe, including increase in the charges for services by $9,199. This budget is fully funded with fees for services rendered by the surveyor division. Increase in salaries and employees benefits by $9,199 due to the road commissioner's cost was reallocated from the Public Works Internal Service Fund Administration Unit to the Surveyor Unit. Next slide, please. Final budget changes for Unit 926500, Public Works Internal Service Fund Administration, including decrease in charges for services by $27,973. This budget is fully funded by charging out for services rendered. A decrease in salaries and employee benefits by the same amount, $27,973, due to the road commissioner cost was reallocated from the Public Works Internal Service Fund Administration Unit to the Severe Unit. Net revenue is $9,208,269. Net expenditures, same amount, $9,208,269, which leads to unreimbursed cost of $0. That remains the same from last fiscal year 25-24. Requested temporary due pass.
Could you pass by Supervisor Jones?
One last slide. This is a Fleet Management Internal Service Fund, budget unit 925600, page number 257 of the recommended budget book, which stays in the Fleet Management Internal Service Fund number 500100. The Fleet Division acquire, maintain, and repair county equipment and vehicles, manages the on-site fuel stations and off-site fuel credit card system. Additionally, Fleet operates the motorboat and rental services. There are 8 FTE in the final budget for the fiscal year 25-26. Final budget changes includes decrease in other financing sources by $185,000 due to a decrease in the revenue. Transfer in as revenue for 2 trucks was delivered in fiscal year 24-25. A decrease in salaries and employee benefits by $5,907 due to health insurance rate decrease. An increase in increase in services and supplies by $1,050 due to pre-employment medical. A decrease in capital assets by $176,012 due to 2 trucks was delivered in fiscal year 24-25. Net revenue is $5,74,250. Net expenditures $6,809,408. which leads to unreimbursed cost of $1,735,158. This is a drawdown from the Fleet Internal Service Fund, which represents 43% increase from last year adopted budget or $524,786 increase, mainly attributed to the vehicles purchases and replacement requests. Request a temporary due pass.
Thank you. Temporary due pass by Supervisor Nev, Supervisor Robinson. And at this time, we'll do a roll call vote for all temporary due passes on everything. So, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Nevs.
Yes.
Richard Valley. Doug Verboon.
Yes.
Rusty Robinson.
4 in favor, 1 absent. Thank you very much. Any comments from the audience? Thank you to staff for doing this. I appreciate your due diligence and your professionalism. It didn't take as long as I thought it would, but thank you again for putting together a great team and getting this done. That budget has increased from 169 to 401 since I've been here. So hope I'm not the problem, but I don't think I am. But it shows what things cost. It's expensive to do business. So thank you to our department heads and staff for sitting through this today, and we'll bring it back here in about a month, right? Okay. I hope that we can go through this year and not too many more cuts, but we don't know about the future, so we're doing good. We're doing better than most.
Just good job. Thank you, CEO Martinez and your staff and all the department heads and everyone who makes the county go round and round every day.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned. See you tomorrow.